quiet contempt can be the first crack in the world's foundation. That cold choice has been made, and the consequences are already moving. Now step across this line with them. Mochou opened her eyes and glanced across at the five. A look of contempt was on her face, and she closed her eyes again. It was as if she was ignoring the enemies in front of her. Cheng Ying looked at her master, waiting for his orders. Huang Yaoshi sighed and said, "Indeed, old heretic Huang has many disciples. If any of my 4 senior disciples, Chen, Mei, Lu, were here, how would she be allowed to say a word?" He then waved his hand and said, "Let's leave." The 4 of them did not understand what he was thinking and followed him back to the hut. They saw that he was unhappy. He went to bed and didn't even eat supper. Yang Gu slept on the bed next to his and recalled the things he said with Sha Gu. He then pondered about Mochou and he thought, "She's laughing at us because it's 5 against 1. I've recovered from my injury now. With my strength alone, I might not lose to her. Why don't I sneak away and fight around with her? This way I can clear her insults about me and Gu Gu and help Island Master Huang vent his anger." He made his decision and dressed himself quietly. Though he was impulsive, he did things rather carefully. He knew Mochou was a very strong foe. If he made just one wrong move, he would die by her hands. So he sat on his bed, circulating his kai, and prepared himself. Once he was at his peak, he would go and fight the duel to the death. He had sat there for around an hour when suddenly his eyes lit up. Kai was everywhere in his body, and he couldn't stop himself from calling out. The call was like the roar of a dragon, like a tiger bellowing in a deep valley, the sound spreading far and wide. Huang Yaoshi had noticed that he was awake when he had got up to dress himself. When he heard this extraordinary call, he was shocked and delighted. He hadn't predicted that Yang Gu's internal energy would make a breakthrough right at this time. When someone's internal energy reaches a certain stage, they would unconsciously call out. Later on in the Ming dynasty, the Deru King Yang Ming was practicing his kai in the middle of the night in his encampment when he suddenly made a prolonged call, shocking his entire camp. Yang Gu's kai was abundant and it was hard for him to control. The bellow spread for many li. Cheng Ying and Lu Wuxuang were extremely startled. Even Mochou was frightened when she heard it. But she thought that it was Huang Yaoshi who was exercising his kai. There was no need to be afraid since he wasn't going to do anything. Yang Gu had the help of the chilled jade bed and had practiced the important aspects of the Jade Heart Manual and 9 Yin Manual. His accumulated internal energy had become profound. A few days before, Huang Yaoshi had helped him to recuperate, but Island Master Huang's internal energy was of a different nature to his. It was provoked by this extremely profound internal energy. Now he couldn't control himself and released a long bellow. The bellow continued for a while before gradually it quieted and then stilled. Huang Yaoshi thought, "I have always thought that my talents were not of this earth, yet I had to wait until I was 30 before reaching such a stage. This young man has reached this stage at least 10 years before me. I wonder what events he has encountered." He waited for Yang Gu to finish and stand up before asking, "Tell me, what do you think is Mochou's most powerful skill?" When Yang Gu heard this, he knew that his intentions had been seen through and replied, "It is the divine 5 poison palm and her fly whisk techniques." Yang Gu was delighted and bowed down to him. Yang Gu was very proud. Though he recognized Huang Yaoshi was a senior and his abilities were superb, he wouldn't lower his head to him. Now that he heard that the martial arts Mochou used to roam the realm could be neutralized, how could he not be in awe? Huang Yaoshi then taught him the skill of the divine flicking finger to neutralize Mochou's divine 5 poison palms, and a sword technique derived from his jade flute swordplay to neutralize the fly whisk techniques. Yang Guo listened to him point out the important aspects of these techniques, and then asked him to explain some of the difficulties. He concentrated and committed them to memory, but he felt that although these 2 types of martial arts are profound and masterly, to make some progress, one will need to practice for at least a year. If he wanted to reach a stage where he would be able to beat her, it would take 3 years and no less. He said, "Island Master Huang, there is no way to beat her right now." Huang Yaoshi said, 3 years will pass in the blink of an eye. Then you'll be 21 or 22 years of age and will have learned these 2 types of martial arts. Isn't that enough?" Yang Gu said, I'm not doing it for me." Huang Yaoshi patted his shoulder and said warmly, "When you kill her for me 3 years from now, I will be extremely touched. Years ago, I destroyed my disciples. Shouldn't I get some kind of payback today?" He gave a long sigh after he said this. Yang Gu knelt down and kowtowed 8 times to him, and then called out, Master! He knew that Huang Yaoshi had passed on martial arts to him so that he will be able to cleanse the 4 lines of Li Mochou's insult. To do this, they will have to be recognized as master and disciple. But Huang Yaoshi knew that his ties with the ancient tomb were extremely deep. He would be unwillingly to accept another master, so he helped him up and said, "When you fight that witch, you are my disciple. At all other times, you are my friend. Little brother Yang, do you understand?" Yang Gu laughed and said, "To be able to make a friend like you really is a glorious event." Huang Yaoshi said, "The 2 of us meeting is the luck of 3 generations." The 2 of them laughed, their sounds moving the 4 walls. Huang Yaoshi once again explained in detail the secrets and ideas of the divine flicking finger and the jade flute swordplay to him. Yang Gu noted that he was explaining them thoroughly and knew that he was about to leave. He said gloomily, "We've just met and now we are about to part. When will we be able to meet again?" Huang Yaoshi laughed and said, "The 2 of us are linked. Even if we are at the opposite ends of the world, we'll still be like neighbors. If in the future I find out that someone is blocking your marriage, even if I'm 10,000 li away, I will rush back and help you." Yang Gu was comforted by this promise and laughed. "I'm afraid that the first person who will come out and stop this marriage will be your loved one." Huang Yaoshi said, "She marries her ideal man and forgets about the suffering and bitterness of others. My precious daughter only listens to her husband, haha. Obey the husband when married. That really is something." He laughed loudly after he said this and turned around and left the room. In a flash, his laughter could be heard tens of feet away. He really moved like a divine dragon, leaving no trace. Yang Gu stood there for a while stunned and then sat down and went over the 2 martial arts that he had just learned. Not long after, the sky became bright. He saw the door open. Cheng Ying had entered with blue-green cloth and a blue-green gown in her hands. She gave a little smile and said, "Try this on, see whether it fits you." Yang Gu was extremely touched. His hands trembled slightly as he received it. Their eyes met and he saw that Cheng Ying's eyes were full of love and boundless tenderness. He went over to the side of the bed and tried the new gown. He felt that the gown fitted perfectly and said, I'm really grateful." Cheng Ying showed another smile, but immediately a depressed expression was on her face. She sighed and said, "Master has gone. I don't know when I'll be able to see him again." She was about to sit down and say something when she saw a yellow image at the door that immediately disappeared. She knew it was her cousin outside and thought, "That girl has too many thoughts. It's not appropriate for me to stay in his room for too long." She stood up and slowly walked out. He carefully studied the gown and noticed that the stitching was careful and tight. He thought, "She and wifey treat me the same, but my heart belongs to someone else. I can't love any others. If I don't leave soon, I'll be giving those 2 a lot of grief." He thought about this for half a day. He was also afraid that when he leaves, Li Mochou would come and attack them. He went to her hut to take a look and saw that in its place was a pile of ash. Li Mochou had burned the hut and left. The enemy had left, and so that night, he wrote a parting letter by candlelight. He thought about the 2 girls' love and felt depressed. He saw that his letter wasn't worded with great aptitude and his handwriting was poor. He was afraid that Cheng Ying would laugh and so ripped the letter up. That night he tossed and turned in his bed as he tried to sleep. In his blurry state, he suddenly heard Lu Wuxia tapping his door and calling out, Sha Dan, quickly come and take a look." Her voice sounded rather anxious and afraid. Yang Gu got up, dressed himself, and opened the door. He felt a slightly chilly breeze and the sky wasn't bright yet. Lu Wuxia's face was filled with fear and pointed at the outside of the door. Yang Gu followed her hand and was shocked. There were 4 blood-red handprints on the door. Li Mochou must have come over to survey the group and found that Huang Yaoshi had left. The 4 prints were left to tell them that she was going to kill the 4 of them. Cheng Ying came out after them and asked, "When did you see this?" Lu Wuxia said, "Before the sky started to get bright." Once she said this, her face went red. She was longing for Yang Gu and had paced back and forth below his window. Cheng Ying pretended that she didn't know and said, "Luckily you didn't bump into her. The sun has begun to rise. That witch won't come again today. We've still got time to plan." The 3 of them returned to Yang Gu's room and discussed what to do about the situation. Lu Wuxia said, "She had a taste of Sha Gu's kung fu the other day. How come she's not afraid of her?" Cheng Ying said, "Apprentice sister's fork technique only has a few stances. She went away and thought about it carefully and must have come up with a way to neutralize it." Lu Wuxia said, "However, Sha Dan has recovered from his injury. With the 2 Sha people together, won't their power be great?" Yang Gu laughed and said, "With Sha Dan plus a Sha Gu, you've got Dumb and Dumber. What power?" The three of them continued their discussion for a while but couldn't come up with any great plan. They thought about the four of them fighting together. They won't be able to beat her but could protect themselves. They decided on fighting her with all their might when she came again the next day. Yang Guo said, "The two Sha people will join up and fight her from the front, you two attack from the sides. Let's go find Sha Gu and practice our plan." The three of them called for Sha Gu, but there was no reply. They didn't know where she was, and the three of them began to worry. The three of them split up to search for her. Cheng Ying searched for a little while and suddenly saw Sha Gu lying on a pile of rocks. Her breathing was weak. Cheng Ying was alarmed and quickly took off her clothes to take a look. She saw that there was a red palm print on her back. She had fallen victim to Li Mochou's divine 5 poison palm. Cheng Ying quickly called for Yang Guo and Lu Wuxia, and then fed a 9-flower jade dew pill to her. Yang Guo remembered the method to cure this palm from the 5 poison codex, and quickly circulated his internal energy and controlled her pressure points. Sha Gu laughed foolishly and said, "Evil woman behind hit me." Sha Gu hit back, hit her. The counterattack that Sha Gu used was one of the 3 palms techniques that Huang Yaoshi taught her. Though Li Mochou succeeded in her ambush, she was struck on the arm and her arm was almost broken. She was frightened and in pain, so she left swiftly, not daring to continue her stances and take Sha Gu's life. The 3 took Sha Gu back to the hut and sat anxiously. With one of the good fighters hurt, in tomorrow's battle it would be even harder to defend against her. Sha Gu had a serious injury. If they escaped with her in tow, they would definitely be caught by Li Mochou. Yang Guo looked at Cheng Ying and then at Lu Wuxia. Then he picked up a piece of string from the needle basket that was at hand, and then grabbed a pair of scissors and started to cut. Sha Gu was lying on the bed and suddenly called out, "Cut it! Cut that evil woman's broom! Cut that broom!" She didn't know it was called a fly whisk and called it a broom. Yang Guo had an idea. That witch's fly whisk is a soft weapon and she uses it superbly. Precious sabers and sharp swords can't harm her. If there really was a large pair of scissors that could be used as a weapon and cut her fly whisk, that would be great. As he thought about this, the string in his left hand started to move like a fly whisk. The scissors in his right hand came forward and cut the string in 2. He then pondered about the fly whisk's movements and how to control the scissors to attack, dreaming up a set of techniques. Cheng Ying said, "There's a blacksmith 7 or 8 li north of here." Lu Wuxia interrupted and said, "Good, we'll go and get that blacksmith to forge a large pair of scissors." Yang Guo thought, "It would be difficult to forge this weapon in such a rush, and I'll have to adjust to the change of battle. This is a lot easier than learning the jade flute swordplay. And anyway, we don't have another plan, so we've got to give it a try. If one of them leaves and takes the order to the blacksmith, it will be extremely dangerous if Li Mochou were to suddenly ambush that person. Right now, the 4 of them could not be separated. So Cheng Ying and Lu Wuxia set up some bedding on the horse and placed Sha Gu on the back of the horse. They made their way to the blacksmith. After the Mongols conquered the Jin, they entered the boundaries of the Song land. This place was the northern frontier of the Song borders. The Mongols had ransacked cities and towns, and the whole place was in ruins. The blacksmith shop was very simple. In the middle was a large anvil. On the floor were pieces of coal and fragments of metals, and there were a few plows and sickles hung on the wall. There was no one in the shop. Yang Guo looked at the shop and thought, "How can weapons be made here?" But since they've made their way here, he might as well ask, so he called out loudly, "Is the blacksmith home?" After a while, an old man entered from a side room. His beard and hair was gray. He was about 50 years old. The man had a hump, most probably from bending down to forge metal over a long time. His eyes were red and small because of smoke from the fires. His left leg was crippled and he had a crutch under his arm. He said, "How can I help you?" Yang Guo was about to reply when suddenly the noise of galloping horses could be heard. 2 horses rushed towards the shop. On one of the horses was a Mongolian captain, on the other was a Han. Yang Guo didn't know whether he was a translator or a guide. The Han loudly said, "Blacksmith Feng, come over here and listen to the orders." The old man greeted them and said, "I am he." The Han said, "The captain has the following orders. All the blacksmiths of this town have 3 days to gather together at Xi'an City to aid the army. You have to be there tomorrow, you hear?" Blacksmith Feng said, "I am old." The Mongolian captain raised his whip and said a few words. The Han said, "If you're not there tomorrow, you'll watch your head get cut off." After he said this, the 2 left. Blacksmith Feng stood there and was lost in thought. Cheng Ying saw that he was old and pitiful. She took out some money and placed it on the table. She said, Master Feng, you're old and can't move well. Won't working in the Mongolian camp lead to losing your life for no reason? Take this money and run away." Blacksmith Feng sighed and said, "Thank you for Mrs. Kindness. This old blacksmith has lived for so long, living and dying isn't much to me. But the thousands and thousands of lives of Jiangnan will be in danger." The three of them were startled and asked, "Why?" Blacksmith Feng said, "The Mongolian army is gathering blacksmiths to forge weapons. Once they have enough, they will definitely invade south into the land of the song." The three of them heard that his words were carefully thought and were very reasonable. They wanted to ask further when Blacksmith Feng said, "What do you three want to order?" Yang Gu said, "Since Master Feng has other matters to attend to, I shouldn't disturb you, but I need it urgently, so I have to trouble you." Yang Gu then described the form and size of the scissors to him. The scissors were a special object, but no one would have thought that as soon as Blacksmith Feng heard it, there were not any signs of surprise on his face. He nodded and pushed and pulled the air bellows and started the furnace up. He then placed 2 pieces of iron into the furnace. Yang Gu said, "Will it be forged by tonight?" Blacksmith Feng said, "I will do my best and go as fast as possible." He pulled and pushed the air bellows furiously. The coals turned a blood-red color. Sha Gu was on a table, half lying down and half sitting up. Yang Gu and the others whose homeland was Jiangnan, though young, when they heard their homeland was in danger, they were worried. The three of them looked at the furnace and thought about the trouble and strife of the world. Human lives weren't regarded as important, and there was worry, hardships, and danger everywhere. Though they were facing difficulties the next day, the fear in their hearts diminished a little. In a little over 2 hours, Blacksmith Feng had heated the iron. He used tongs in his left hand and placed the softened metal on the anvil. With his right, he used an iron hammer to forge the metal. Though he was old, he was still strong. It seemed as if he didn't use any effort in using the hammer. After a while, the 2 pieces of metal started to take the rough shape of a large pairs of scissors, forming gradually. Lu Wuxia said happily, "Sha Dan, it's going to be made in time." Suddenly a voice from behind said coldly, "Making a pair of scissors to cut my fly whisk." The three of them were startled and turned their heads around, only to see Mochou standing at the entrance, lightly waving her fly whisk about. The weapon had yet to be finished, but the enemy had arrived. Cheng Ying and Lu Wuxia both drew their swords. Yang Gu looked at an iron rod by the furnace. As soon as the enemy makes her move, he will grab the rod and use it. Mochou chuckled, "Forging a pair of large scissors to cut my fly whisk. Only you kids would think of that. I'll sit here and wait for you to finish. There's still time." She then sat on a bench and looked upon the three as nothing to worry about. Yang Gu said, "That's good. I say that your fly whisk will definitely be cut by the scissors." Mochou saw Sha Gu sitting up on the table and thought, "That woman took a palm of mine and is still able to sit up. She's quite good." She asked coldly, "Where's Huang Yaoshi?" When Blacksmith Feng heard the 3 words, Huang Yaoshi, he shivered and looked up at her and then immediately lowered his head, continuing with the forging. Cheng Ying said, "You know that my master is not here, so why ask? If you knew he was still here, even if you've got the greatest gall of anyone, you wouldn't dare come." Mochou gave a humph sound and took out a piece of paper from her pockets and said, "Huang Yaoshi got his fame by taking in many disciples and relying on numbers to win. Out of all his disciples, which one was really able?" She waved out her left hand, and the paper flew away. Her arm moved slightly, and a silver needle shot out, pinning the piece of paper on a pillar. She said, "I'll leave this as evidence. When that old heretic Huang comes back, he'll know who killed his 2 precious disciples." She turned her head around to Blacksmith Feng and said, "Work quicker, I'm getting impatient." Blacksmith Feng squinted his red eyes and looked at the piece of paper. He saw the words, "The master of Peach Blossom Island. Disciples he has many. 5 against 1, it's the laughing stock of Jianghu." He looked up at the roof and was lost in thought. Mochou said, "Why aren't you working quickly?" Blacksmith Feng lowered his head and said, "Yes, quicker, quicker." His left hand stretched out the iron tongs and held the needle and paper. He placed them into the flaming fire of the furnace. In a flash, the paper burned to ash. Everyone was extremely surprised by this event. Mochou was furious. She raised her fly whisk and wanted to strike down on his head, but thought, "This small-town blacksmith is extremely bold. Could it be that he is an extraordinary person?" She was now standing. She then slowly sat down, asked, "Who are you?" Blacksmith Feng said, "Can't you see? I'm an old blacksmith." Mochou said, "Why did you burn my piece of paper?" Blacksmith Feng said, "The words on the paper are wrong. It's best not to hang it in this shop." Mochou said sternly, "What's wrong with the words?" Blacksmith Feng said, The master of Peach Blossom Island has the ability to move heaven and earth. All his disciples need to do is to learn one art of his, and they will be able to roam the realm. His first disciple is called Gling Feng. His lightness kung fu is divine, and he is specialized in the art of the iron 8 trigram palms. The variations in his martial arts are incredible. His second disciple is Chen Xuanfeng. He has trained his body to the point of that his bones and muscles are as strong as bronze and iron, impenetrable by sabers and spears. Have you heard about this? When he was talking, he was still forging at the same time. The hammering sounds increased the force of his words. Li Mochou was surprised when she heard him mention Gling Feng. Yang Guo and others were also surprised. They would never have thought that an old blacksmith in a place like this would know about the people of Jianghu. Blacksmith Feng said, The master of the Peach Blossom Island's third disciple is called Mei Kao Feng, although she is a woman. Her claw and whip techniques are very fierce. Li Mochou laughed and said, Yes, that woman's claw and whip techniques were just too fierce. Because of this, the 7 freaks of Jiangnan blinded her, and later on, Western poison Aoyang Feng shattered her lungs. Blacksmith Feng was stunned for a while and then said bleakly, That happened. I didn't know about it. The master of Peach Blossom Island's second disciple is Chen Xuanfeng. His lightness kung fu is divine, the slashing air palm extraordinarily powerful. Li Mochou said, Someone with 2 broken legs and who can't walk, that must be Lu Chengfeng with his divine lightness kung fu. Without working legs, he should rely on the wind, Chengfeng, fly off with wind to fly ha-ha, powerful slashing air palm. Every palm that comes out meets thin air that is the slashing air palm of the master of Peach Blossom Island. Blacksmith Feng lowered his head. 2 kai sounds were heard as 2 tear drops landed on the heated iron and turned into steam. Lu Wuxia was sitting the closest to him and saw his tears clearly. She secretly wondered what it was about. She just saw him raised his hammer even higher, the striking sounds of the metal now even louder. After a while, Blacksmith Feng continued, Peach Blossom Island has 4 senior disciples, Chen, Mei, Lu. The 4th disciple, Lu Chengfeng, had not only great martial arts, he was also well versed in the arts of formations and changes. If you meet him, you definitely won't be able to escape. Li Mochou chuckled and said, What use is the art of formations and changes? He built the returning Echo Manor by Lake Tai. The men of Jianghu said that was extremely ingenious, but someone burned it to the ground. From then onwards, there was no news of him. Most probably he got burned to death along with his manor. Feng Mofeng continued, The beloved daughter of the master of the Peach Blossom Island is also the leader of the Beggars clan. Chief Huang's intelligence is unsurpassed, and she is famous throughout the realm. If she wanted to deal with you, you would never be able to see it coming. Li Mochou scoffed. Young Huang wrong. I dare to say that she doesn't really have any true martial arts. She just relies on her husband's fame and great martial arts. The reason why she could become the leader of the Beggars Association is due to the fact that her teacher was Hong Qigong, and he supported her in becoming the leader. Blacksmith Feng raised his head and said sternly, You talk rubbish, priestess. All the disciples of the master of Peach Blossom Island are highly skilled in martial arts. How could they all fall at the hands of others? Are you trying to take advantage of this country bumpkin not knowing the matters of the world? Li Mochou chuckled and said, Ask those 3 kids and you'll know. Blacksmith Feng turned his head towards Cheng Ying, his eyes inquiring. Cheng Ying stood up and said gloomily, My apprentice brothers and sisters have been unfortunate. They have all passed away. I haven't been in the school for long. My martial arts are low and I can't help master fight. I really am ashamed. Do you have ties with my master? Blacksmith Feng didn't reply and examined her. He looked suspicious and said, The master of Peach Blossom Island took in another disciple in his later years. Cheng Ying saw that Blacksmith Feng's left leg was crippled. She suddenly had a thought and said, Master was lonely in his later years. He ordered me to serve him at his side. With my age and study, I really wouldn't dare to say that I'm a disciple of Peach Blossom Island. I haven't even taken a single step onto Peach Blossom Island. The way she phrased her words, she admitted that she was a disciple of Peach Blossom Island. Blacksmith Feng nodded. His eyes were very gentle. There was a feeling of being close to someone. He lowered his head and continued to forge metal. It was as if he was in deep thought about something. Cheng Ying saw that when his hammer was in the air, it made half a circle when it descended onto the anvil. It was tilted and dragged. The hand movements were extremely similar to her school's divine descending sword palm technique. She understood further and said, When Master had spare time, he would talk to me. He talked about how years ago he sent his disciples away from the island. Chen and Mei were the ones who did wrong. Kalu, Wu, and Feng were innocent, but because of those two they were punished. What was especially tragic was apprentice brother Feng Mo Feng. He was young and had a harsh background. When Master thought about this, he would feel uncomfortable and extremely regretful. From the way the two talked, Li Mochou had guessed who he was. Then she heard blacksmith Feng sigh, and his tears fell like rain. Kai, Kai, Kai. As the tears struck the hot metal and turned into steam, she couldn't stop her heart from softening, but after thinking, she became strong again. She thought, even if they got another fighter, the old blacksmith is crippled, how could he help? She chuckled and said, Feng Mo Feng, congratulations on your reunion with your apprentice sister. That blacksmith was Huang Yaoshi's junior disciple, Feng Mo Feng. Years ago, when Chen Xuanfeng and Mei Kaofeng stole the 9-yin manual and escaped from the island, Huang Yaoshi broke the legs of all the remaining disciples before expelling them from the island. Keling Feng, Lu Chengfeng, and Wu Tianfeng had both their legs broken, but when he came to Feng Mo Feng, because he was young and his martial arts low, pity stirred in his mind and he just broke his left leg. Feng Mo Feng was extremely hurt inside. He eventually came to this place and made a living as a blacksmith. He didn't keep any contacts with the Jianghu world and had silently lived here for the past 30 years. He couldn't have predicted that today he would have news of his master and apprentices again. Huang Yaoshi saved his life from his enemies. Huang Yaoshi brought him up. His debts to him were great. No matter how Huang Yaoshi had treated him, there was no hate in his heart. When he heard the words of Cheng Ying, his emotions were stirred and his grief and sorrow came out. Deep hatred for father's killer. Yang Guo and Lu Wuxia were both shocked and pleased to hear that blacksmith Feng was actually Cheng Ying's apprentice brother. Being Huang Yaoshi's disciple, his martial arts can't be that bad. Unexpectedly, they suddenly had another strong helper in this danger. Li Mochou chuckled. You've been expelled by your master, yet you still can't let go. Isn't that extremely stupid? Today I'm going to kill 3 kids and a mad woman. You better just stand aside and take in the atmosphere. Feng Mo Feng said slowly, though I've learned martial arts, I have never fought anyone before in my life and my left leg is crippled. I can't really fight. Li Mochou said, yes, that's the best thing for you. You can't afford to throw your life away. Feng Mo Feng shook his head and said, I cannot allow you to harm a single hair of my apprentice sister's head. Since these people are friends of hers, you better find somewhere else to do evil. Li Mochou's murderous intent was stirred and she laughed. The 4 of you fighting me at once, that's great. She stood up. Feng Mo Feng was unmoved and kept on striking the metal with his hammer. He was like a character from an opera following prompts from a gong. He struck the metal and then followed it with a few words. He said, I left my school over 30 years ago. My martial arts have gone rusty long ago. I need to think hard about them. Li Mochou laughed and said, half my life I've roamed Jianghu, but I've never seen a person like you who grabs the feet of Buddha and prepares for battle at the last minute. Today my eyes have been opened. Feng Mo Feng, have you really never fought anyone before in your life? Feng Mo Feng said, I never offend others. When others beat me and insult me, I don't do anything. So of course my hands have never been raised against anyone. Li Mochou chuckled and said, ha ha, old heretic, Huang actually picked a bunch of face-losing crap to be his disciples. Feng Mo Feng said, please don't speak ill of my merciful master like that. Li Mochou gave a wry laugh and said, he abandoned you as a master long ago, yet you still merciful master this, merciful that. You're not afraid of making people laugh. Feng Mo Feng continued to strike down with his hammer and said, I have no one in this world. The only loved one I have is my merciful master. If I don't respect him, love him, who should I think about? Little apprentice sister is master well. Cheng Ying said, master is very well. When Li Mochou saw his feelings, she thought, old heretic Huang is a good master, and indeed there is something great about him. He beat his disciple into this state, yet this person still remains loyal to him. The metal that was being forged was now gradually getting colder. Feng Mo Feng again used his tongs to place the metal into the furnace, but he was preoccupied and actually sent the hammer in his right hand into the furnace instead. Li Mochou laughed and said, Blacksmith Feng, just slowly think about your master's martial arts. There's no need to lose your mind as well. Feng Mo Feng didn't reply and stared at the flaming furnace in deep thought. After a while, he sent the crutch under his left arm into the furnace. Yang Guo and Lu Wuxia both said, that's your crutch. Cheng Ying also called out, apprentice brother. Feng Mo Feng still did not reply and gazed into the furnace. The crutch didn't burn in the furnace. Instead, it gradually became red. The crutch was actually made of metal. After another while, the hammer also became red, but his hands weren't burned as he held onto the handle of the hammer and crutch. Li Machu's disdain turned into precaution. She knew that this rough-looking man must have qualities that excel. She was afraid that he would suddenly attack, and she would fall victim to him, so she urgently waved her fly whisk about to protect her front's fatal areas and leapt outside, calling out, "Blacksmith Feng, let's just get it over with." Feng Mofeng responded and exited the shop. His movements were swift and light. It didn't look like he was crippled. He placed his red crutch into the ground and said, "Angelic priestess, please don't insult my master and please stop troubling my apprentice sister, and spare the bitter life of this old blacksmith." Li Machu was again greatly surprised and thought, "Why is he begging just before he's about to fight?" She said, "I will spare you only. If you are afraid, then don't intervene." Feng Mofeng clenched his teeth and said, "Fine, then kill me first." As he said this, he trembled. He was afraid, but was also emotional. Li Machu raised her fly whisk and struck down towards his head. Feng Mofeng quickly leapt away. His dodging was very sharp, but his arms trembled. He actually was afraid to counterattack. Li Machu attacked 3 times in a row, but each time, Feng Mofeng avoided the attacks with great movements, yet he still did not counterattack. Yang Guo and the others were standing to the side watching. When the time came, they will go and help. They saw that Li Machu's attacks were gradually intensifying, and Feng Mofeng really looked like someone who has never fought before. In accordance with his peaceful nature, he didn't make an attack with his red hammer. Yang Guo thought that this isn't good, though this person's martial arts are strong. He didn't have any intent to fight, and he must be stirred, so he said loudly, "Li Machu, why did you insult Island Master Huang by calling him heartless, unrighteous, and wicked?" Li Machu thought, "When did I insult him?" She sped up her attacks and did not reply. Yang Guo continued, "You said that Island Master Huang seduced others' daughters and wives, captured others' sons and brothers. Did you see that with your own eyes? You said he lied to friends, betrayed his benefactors. Did those things really happen? Why did you spread all these things over the world of Jianghu and tarnish Island Master Huang's name?" Cheng Ying was startled and didn't understand. Feng Mofeng's fury erupted when he heard this. His valor stirred, and he attacked with his hammer and crutch at the same time. His left leg was on the ground, assuming the form golden cockerel standing alone. It was like he was nailed to the ground, sturdy and still. The hammer and crutch produced a fierce gust of blazing air, heading straight towards Li Machu. Li Machu saw that the incoming force was ferocious. She didn't dare to meet it front on and leapt out of the way, looking for a gap to attack him. Yang Guo carried on, "Li Machu, you said that Island Master Huang is a liar and a shameless scoundrel. I say that you're the shameless one." Feng Mofeng was becoming angrier and angrier as he heard this. The hammer and crutch swept and lunged forward with unstoppable force. At first, his stances looked rather rusty, but as he fought on, they became more and more fluid. Indeed, after another 10 or so moves, Feng Mofeng's anger gradually disappeared. His will faded, and he began to slip away. Li Machu was thrilled and attacked with her fly whisk towards his chest. Feng Mofeng swept his hammer across to block. The fly whisk curved its way around and wrapped around the hammer's head. This was the special stance that Li Machu used to take the opponent's weapon. All she needed to do was trap the weapon and pull. The hammer would then leave Feng Mofeng's hand. But as she did this, kai, kai, kai sounds were heard, smoke rose, everyone smelt an unpleasant smell. The hairs of the fly whisk were burned off. Instead of taking the opponent's weapon, Li Machu had lost her own. She remained calm and threw the handle of the fly whisk away and changed her attack to her divine 5 poison palm. Though this palm technique was powerful, one has to be very close to the opponent to use it. Feng Mofeng had a hammer in his right hand and a crutch in his left. He was using it swiftly and forcefully with gusts of wind generated. He was now able to do as he wished. However, in between the two images, smoke kept on rising up. Li Machu's gown was being burned by the hot hammer and crutch. Piece by piece, her gown was getting burned. She was furious. She was definitely going to gain victory, but the old blacksmith had an advantage in his weaponry. She could not take it at all and wanted to strike him with a palm to vent her anger. This was the first time that Feng Mofeng fought somebody. If he had been held back and on the receiving end of a beating, he would have retreated. But now he had the upper hand. The stances of the hammer and crutch were coming out with extreme mastery. Li Machu was almost struck by the hammer and crutch a few times in her quest to land a palm on him. If it wasn't for her speed, her palm would have been burned. Suddenly, Feng Mofeng called out, "I don't want to fight. I don't want to fight. Look at you. What decency have you left?" His single leg leapt back 5 feet. Li Machu was stunned. A cool breeze blew and pieces of her clothing flew away. Her arms, shoulders, chest, and legs were revealed. She was a virgin. She wasn't able to control her embarrassment. She wanted to turn around and run away when suddenly her back felt cool. A large piece of cloth flew away from her back. Yang Yu saw that she was in a wretched state. He tore off his belt and took off his gown. He circulated his internal energy and shot it over to her. The gown was like a person hugging her. Li Machu quickly put her arms in the sleeves of the gown and buttoned it up. She has seen countless battles in her life, but right now she was frightened and embarrassed. Her face was red one moment, white the next. She didn't know whether or not to keep on fighting. She thought, if I fight him again, this gown will be burned off again. I can only swallow my anger and do something about it later. She nodded at Yang Guo, thanking him for giving her the gown. She then turned her head towards Feng Mofeng and said, "These crafty weapons are indeed the evil skills of old heretic Huang. To tell the truth, if it was a battle with proper martial arts alone, could you beat me? If old heretic Huang's disciples fought fairly and squarely one-on-one with me, could they beat me?" Feng Mofeng said with ease, "If you didn't lose your weapon, after a while you'd be able to beat me." Li Machu said arrogantly, "It's good that you know it. My words on that piece of paper about the disciples of Peach Blossom Island winning by numbers aren't wrong." Feng Mofeng lowered his head and pondered. After a while he said, "That is not correct. If my apprentice brothers and sister, Chen, Mei, and Lu were here, any one of them would be stronger than you. I don't even need to mention my highly skilled apprentice brothers, Ken Chen. You wouldn't be able to beat my apprentice sister, Mei Keo Feng, who's also a woman like you." Li Machu chuckled and said, "All those people are dead and can't prove anything. Why are you talking about them? Old heretic Huang's martial arts aren't all that good. I wanted to test out his daughter Mrs. Gu's martial arts, but I don't think there's a need to now." She turned around and was about to leave. Yang Gu had a thought in his mind and said, "Wait." Li Machu's brows raised and she said, "What?" Yang Gu said, "You're wrong about Island Master Huang's martial arts being so-so. I heard of swordplay from him called the Jade Flute Swordplay. It can neutralize your fly whisk techniques." He picked up an iron rod and drew on the ground. He explained, "Your attacks from the front are indeed swift and powerful, but if his sword cuts down from this direction, you will not be able to take back your attack. If you counterattack, the sword will attack quickly from this direction. If you sweep the fly whisk and attack the pressure points, then he'll use a tiger claw form and grab your whisk's tips, turn his sword around and use the handle to strike the virtuous pressure point on your shoulder. Can you imagine that?" That stance was indeed unimaginably strange, but it was also ingenious. Brushing the pressure points in front of her were one of Li Machu's fly whisk technique's lethal stances. The stance that Yang Gu described left her with no reply. In such a case, she could only throw down her fly whisk and admit defeat. Yang Gu made another comparison and said, "When it comes to your divine 5-poison palm, Island Master Huang will use his fingernail to neutralize your palm. When your palm arrives, he will use the divine release of the flicking finger, his fingernail flicking against your palm. How can your palm not be crippled as a result? All he needs to do is to immediately cut off his fingernail, and the palm's poison won't spread to his body." He continued and described over 10 other different stances that could neutralize her martial arts. These words turned Li Machu's face gray. Every word of his was reasonable and logical. The stances that he described were ingenious. She wouldn't be able to fend them off. Yang Gu said, "Island Master Huang was angry at your words. He has the status of being a great master and cannot fight you personally, so he passed these techniques to me so I could take care of you. But I thought about how my master and you are still apprentice sisters. Today I give you a warning about the power of Island Master Huang. Next time you see his disciples, you better run as far away as possible." Li Machu was silent for a while and then said, "I give up. I give up." She turned around and ran away. In a flash, her image disappeared behind the hills. Her speed was really something rarely seen in the world of Jianghu. In reality, although Huang Yaoshi did pass these techniques to Yang Gu, to be able to reach a state where he could use it to neutralize and defeat an enemy requires years of practice. Yang Gu's description of these techniques was enough to intimidate and overawe her. And from now on, she would never dare to say one derisive word about Huang Yaoshi. In the vicinity of Li Machu, Lu Wuxuang's heart would jump at the sound of her voice. When she saw that Li Machu had gone, it was like a heavy load had been removed from her. She clapped and laughed, saying, "Sha Dan, you're pretty good with words. You could even scare away my master." Cheng Ying had seen Yang Gu throw away the gown she had personally made to Li Mochou. It was a pressing situation then, and that was that. But she saw that underneath the new gown, he was still wearing the torn and ragged old one. She knew that Xiao Longnu must have made it. He was attached to familiar things and would never forget about things of old. Her heart ached a little, but she pretended she didn't care. Then, the four of them returned to the shop to take a look at Sha Gu. Just as they entered, the sudden clamor of men and neighing of horses could be heard from beyond the hills. The four of them turned around. Yang Gu said, "I'll go take a look." He leapt on his horse and galloped around the hill and arrived at the main road. He saw dust and dirt flying up everywhere. It was a division of Mongolian soldiers heading south. They had iron bows and long sabers, their force like a crashing wave. Yang Gu has never seen an army marching before. He watched with a thumping heart, stunned. Two soldiers raised their long sabers and shouted, "Barbarian, what are you looking at?" They rushed over. Yang Gu turned his horse around and galloped away. The two Mongolian soldiers raised their bows and shot an arrow towards his back. Yang Gu turned his head back and caught them, but felt the great force behind the arrows. If he didn't know martial arts, these arrows would have pierced his chest. The two soldiers were frightened when they saw his abilities and reined in their horses, not daring to continue pursuing him. Yang Gu returned to the blacksmiths and told them what he saw. Feng Mofeng sighed. "The Mongolian army are indeed heading south. The Chinese citizens are going to suffer," Yang Gu said. "The Song army will not be able to defend against the archery techniques of the Mongolian army. This is going to be a great disaster." Feng Mofeng said, "This is just the time for a brave and heroic young man like Master Yang. Why don't you return south and join the army and help fight off the invaders?" Yang Gu was taken aback. He said, "No, I have to go north to find my Gugu. The Mongolian army's power is vast. I'm just one person, what use would I be?" Feng Mofeng shook his head and said, "Though the force of one person is small, the force of many is strong. If everyone thought like you, who'd come out to defend the country against invaders?" Yang Gu knew that his words were right, but now there was nothing more important to him than finding his Gugu. He had wandered around Jianghu ever since he was small. He had suffered the abuse of officials. He saw that the Mongolians were indeed violent and ruthless, but the Song Emperor may not be a good person himself. There was no need for him to help the emperor. He just gave a wry smile and didn't reply. Feng Mofeng gathered his hammer, tongs, and air bellows and hung them across his back. He turned to Cheng Ying and said, "Apprentice sister, when you see master, please tell him that disciple Feng Mofeng will never forget his teachings. Today I'm going to join the Mongolian army, and I'm going to kill one or two of these generals who are invading my land. Apprentice sister, take care. I'm extremely delighted at seeing a disciple of master's." He supported himself on his crutch and left, not even turning his head again. He didn't take another look at Yang Gu. Yang Gu looked at Cheng Ying and Lu Wuxuang. He said, "It was unexpected that we would meet such a person like him here." Lu Wuxuang favored Yang Gu in her heart and said, "Cousin, apart from you, the people under the tutelage of your master are either mad or crazy." Cheng Ying smiled and said mildly, "Everyone has their own will, you can't force them. You said he was mad and crazy. He in turn might be calling us heartless. Anyway, don't I possess a touch of madness and craziness myself?" Yang Gu's heart jumped when he heard this. She looked different and he couldn't tell whether her words were meant to be ambiguous. Suddenly a thumping sound was heard as Sha Gu fell from her bench. The three of them were alarmed and quickly put her up on a bed. Her face was red and her eyes stared ahead blankly. The poison from the divine 5-poison palm was flaring up again. Cheng Ying fed her some medicine, while Yang Gu helped her soothe her pressure points. Sha Gu looked at him startled. Her face was full of fear as she called out, "Brother Yang, don't look for me for revenge. It wasn't me who killed you." Cheng Ying said softly, "Sister, don't be scared. He isn't." Yang Gu suddenly thought, "She's not fully conscious at the moment. I can force her to reveal the truth." He turned his hands and grabbed onto her wrists and said with a severe tone, "Who killed me? If you don't tell me, then I'll take my revenge on you." Sha Gu begged, "Brother Yang, it's not me." Yang Gu said angrily, "You're not telling me? Fine, I'll strangle you to death." He stretched his hands around her throat. Sha Gu gave out a piercing scream. How would Cheng Ying and Lu Wuxuang know what Yang Gu was doing? They both called out to stop him. One called out, "Brother Yang." The other called out, "Sha Dan." One said, "Don't frighten her further." The other said, "Why are you mucking around at a time like this?" Yang Gu didn't take any notice. He closed his hands slightly tighter. The expression of an evil spirit was on his face. He clenched his teeth and said, "I'm Brother Yang's evil ghost. I died a horrible death, do you know that?" Gu said. "I know after you died, crows ate your flesh." Yang Guo's heart felt as if a knife was plunged into his heart. He knew that his father had died under someone else's hands, but he didn't know that after he died, his body was actually eaten by crows and wasn't buried. He called out, "Who killed me? Tell me, tell me." Gu strained out, "It was you who hit Auntie. Auntie had poisoned needles on her body. You died." Yang Guo yelled loudly, "Who is this Auntie?" Gu couldn't breathe with Yang Guo holding her throat and wanted to faint. She said quietly, "Auntie is Auntie." Yang Guo said, "What's Auntie's surname?" "What's her name?" Gu said, I don't know, let me go." Lu Wuxia saw that the situation was becoming urgent. She went over to pull away Yang Guo's hands. Right now, Yang Guo was like a madman. He waved out with all his strength. How could Lu Wuxia defend herself? She was thrown away and crashed into a wall painfully. Cheng Ying saw that the usually peaceful, warm, and graceful Yang Guo was now like a mad tiger. She was so frightened that her limbs went limp. Yang Guo thought, "If today I can't get the name of the person who killed my father, I'll immediately throw up blood and die." He asked, Is Auntie's name Mei?" He thought that since Gu's surname was, her auntie's surname would most probably be, or perhaps it could have been Mei Keofeng. Gu struggled with all her strength. Though she has practiced martial arts for a longer time than Yang Guo, her martial arts couldn't compare to his. The pressure points on her wrist were being held and she couldn't break free. She could only say urgently, "Go and find Auntie for revenge, Don't look for me," Yang Guo said. "Where's your Auntie?" Gu said, "Me and Grandpa left. She's with a man on the island." Yang Guo's spine chilled when he heard these words. He quivered. "What does your Auntie call your grandpa?" Gu said, "Father, what else?" Yang Guo's face went gray, but he was afraid he was wrong and asked, "Your auntie's man is called Guo Jing, isn't he?" Gu said, "I don't know. Auntie just calls him Brother Jing, Jing Ji Ji." She copied the way Huang Rong called Guo Jing. Suddenly her legs flailed about and squealed. "Help, help, ghost, ghost." What doubts did Yang Guo have now? All the suffering and bitterness of the past rushed to the surface, and he thought, "If father wasn't killed, my mother wouldn't have been in pain all the time and die so early like that. I wouldn't have endured all the pain and suffering I've been through." He continued, "When I was on Peach Blossom Island, the Guo couple were not at ease with me. They were a bit too polite. They seemed to be covering up something and didn't treat me like the Wu brothers. Telling them how things are, shouting at them when needed. I felt something then, but how would I know that it was because they carried the guilt of killing my father? It's because of this that they didn't want to teach me martial arts and sent me to the Quanjin sect to suffer." His anger and fear stirred throughout him. His limbs became limp. Gu called out loudly and leapt up from the bed. Cheng Ying went over to Yang Guo and said softly, "Sister Sha has always been a bit crazy, you know about this. She's even worse after suffering this injury. Don't believe her whatever you do." But in her heart, she believed that the words of Gu were true, and she knew that consoling him like this would be no use. But her heart couldn't endure seeing his face full of anger, despair, bitterness, and sorrow. Yang Guo did not take in any of these words. He stood there stunned for a while before calling out. He got on his horse, kicked with his legs, and the horse galloped forward. In a flash, it had gone over 100 feet. Faint calls of Sha Dan and Brother Yang were heard behind him, but he ignored them. The only thought in his mind was, "I need to take revenge, I need to take revenge." He galloped in a single stretch for 2 hours and had gone tens of li. Suddenly, he felt a pain on his lips. He lifted his hand and felt them. His hand was covered in blood. In his anger and pain, he had bitten down and actually pierced his lower lip. He thought, "Auntie Guo has always treated me badly, but recently she suddenly began to treat me well, but it was all fake. I don't care about this, but Uncle Guo. He had always revered Guo Jing. He felt that his actions and martial arts were one of a kind, and he had always treated him exceedingly well. Now he knew that this was one big lie. He felt that this person was even more cunning than Huang Rong. Anger and resentment filled him, almost bursting out of his chest. He had never seen his father and had never heard anyone talk about him, not even his own mother. But ever since he was little, he had the image of the perfect father in his mind. There wasn't another who was as kind as him. Yet this hero was killed by a devious trick of Guo Jing and Huang Rong. He cried for a while before hearing the sounds of horses. 4 horses galloped from the north, the riders all Mongolian warriors. The first rider was holding a long spear. On the spear was a child that was 2 or 3 years of age. He was laughing as he galloped along. The baby was still alive. It was giving out a weak cry. The four warriors were a little surprised when they saw Yang Guo in the middle of the road. But a ragged-clothed young Han like him could be found everywhere, so they didn't take any notice. One of them called out, "Move out of the way, move out of the way." As he said this, he thrust his spear forward. Yang Guo was deep in the middle of his troubles right now. Without thinking, he pulled the spearhead forward and dragged the warrior down. He turned his hand and swept the spear. The warrior went flying over 10 feet away. His skull was crushed and he died. When the remaining 3 warriors saw his valor, they called out, turned around and galloped away. A pie sound was heard as the baby fell onto the ground. Yang Guo ran up to it and saw that it was a Han child. It was healthy, chubby, and very cute. The pierce to its stomach wouldn't kill it right away, but it would be difficult for it to recover and live. It was calling out, as if it was calling out for its mother. Yang Guo was overwhelmed with sorrow and grief, and sympathy stirred in his heart. He picked up the barely alive baby and tears flowed again. He saw that its pain was unbearable, so he lightly gave it a palm and stopped its pain. He used the Mongolian warrior's spear to dig a hole so he could bury the baby. He dug 10 or so times before he heard the thunderous noise of horses and horns. A group of Mongolian soldiers were rushing towards him. Yang Guo's left hand held the dead baby. His right extended the spear as he got on the horse. The skinny horse was actually an experienced battle horse. When it saw it was about to go into battle, its spirit soared. It neighed and charged towards the Mongolian soldiers. Yang Guo's hand raised, the spear descended. He turned over 3 or 4 soldiers in one go, but he saw that countless soldiers were coming. He turned the horse around, went onto the wild lands, and rode away. Arrows rained down behind him like locusts. He swung the spear and deflected the arrows away. The skinny horse was extremely fast. In a short while it had left the Mongolian soldiers behind, but it didn't stop. It continued galloping away like the wind into the wild lands. After another while, Yang Guo saw that the sky was beginning to get dark. He looked around and saw that long grass and strange rocks were everywhere. Dusk was covering the area. It was quiet without any sounds of people, and there wasn't even a crow or sparrow about. He got off the horse with the baby still held in his hands. The face still looked alive, but covered in extreme suffering. Pain filled his heart, he thought. The parents of this child must have loved it very much. Now that he's dead, his parents must be feeling great pain. I don't know how many people have died by the hands of these vicious and violent Mongolian soldiers as they head south. The more he thought about it, the more difficult he found to endure. He dug a hole by a large tree and buried the child. He then thought about the words of Sha Gu again. When this child died, it had me to bury it, but my father's body was eaten by crows. You killed him, what harm is there in burying him? You really are evil. If I don't take revenge, Yang Guo isn't a human. That night he slept in a tree. The next morning he rode the horse and let the horse go as it pleased. Sometimes he thought about going back to the tomb to see Xiao Longnu, and at others he would think about how he must kill Gu, Jing, and Huang Rong first, no matter what, to avenge his father. When he felt hungry, he would pluck wild fruits to eat. On the 4th day, he saw someone far away, leaping up to a tree to pick some wild fruits. Yang Guo rode closer and saw that it was the disciple of Jinlun Fawang, Derba. Every time he jumped, he could only pick one fruit. Eventually, he became impatient and attacked the tree a few times. The tree gave a croak as it broke. He then plucked the wild fruits from the tree and placed them in his pockets. Yang Guo thought, could it be that Jinlun Fawang is nearby? He and Jinlun Fawang originally didn't have any ties, but now he had recognized Gu, Jing, and Huang Rong as his father's killers. He regretted helping Gu, Jing, and Huang Rong in opposing Fawang. He quietly followed Derba to see where he was going. He saw him moving like he was flying, straight towards the mountains. Yang Guo got off the horse and followed from a distance behind. Derba headed into a forest. The further he went, the higher he got. Yang Guo followed him up to the peak of a mountain. At the top of the mountain was a small, exposed hut. Jinlun Fawang was sitting in the middle of the hut, meditating with his eyes closed and eyebrows drooping down. Derba put the wild fruits down on the floor and turned around. His face changed as he suddenly saw Yang Guo approaching. He called out, "Senior apprentice brother, you've come to cause further harm to master." He dashed forward to Yang Guo and stretched out his arm to twist the front of his garment. His martial arts are better than Yang Guo's, but he was affected by the perilous situation that his master was in, and in his fear he lost control of his state of mind. This stance was a mess and broke one of the rules of martial arts. Yang Guo grabbed his arm in return and tossed him away. Derba had always thought that Yang Guo was the reincarnation of his senior apprentice brother, and now he was thrown on the ground by him. He rolled over a few times, picked himself up, and then leapt in front of Yang Guo. Yang Guo thought that he was going to raise his hands again, so he took a step backwards. He didn't know that Derba would suddenly fall down to his knees and kowtow. "Senior apprentice brother, please remember your relationship with Master in your previous life. Master has a serious injury and is now trying to recuperate if you disturb him, then." His voice croaked as he reached this point and tears flowed. Though Yang Guo did not understand his Tibetan from his emotional state and Jinlun Faowang's distressed look, he more or less understood. He quickly helped him up and said, "Relax, I'm not going to harm your master." Derba saw that his face was gentle and peaceful. He was pleased. Although he didn't understand his words, his wariness started to go away. Right at this time, Jinlun Faowang opened his eyes. He was shocked when he saw Yang Guo. He was concentrating on circulating his Kai and didn't hear the words of Derba and Yang Guo. Suddenly, he saw the enemy in front of him. He gave a sigh and said slowly, "I have practiced martial arts for many years, but I still have yet to find a way to break through the echelon barrier. I didn't know that today I would die in the Central Plains." When he suffered that blow from the rock, he had suffered serious internal injuries. In the past few days, he had built a hut on the top of the mountain so he could recuperate. It was unexpected that Yang Guo would actually find his way here. He wasn't able to use even 1 ounce of strength at the moment. He immediately ordered Derba to force Yang Guo away. But in the middle of their battle, his state of mind would be disturbed, and it would be difficult to recover from this serious injury. How would he know that Yang Guo would bow? Then say, "I have not come here to do any harm to the Reverend. Please don't be wary." Jinlun Faowang shook his head and was about to say something when he felt a severe pain in his chest. He quickly closed his eyes and circulated his Kai. Yang Guo went inside the hut and stretched out his right hand, placing it on the Yang pressure point. This pressure point is just below the 7th vertebrae and is one of the major pressure points that regulates the veins and arteries. Derba was shocked when he saw this. He sent out a fist towards Yang Guo. Yang Guo shook his left hand and made a signal with his eyes. Derba saw that nothing was wrong with his master. A slight smile was forming on his face, and he took back his fist. Yang Guo's internal energy was not deep, and he didn't know anything about Tibetan internal energy. When he felt a Faowang's internal Kai stirring, he circulated his internal energy and sent Kai to him to help him clear upwards the spirit stage. Divine root, body pillar, and chest root. Then clearing the downwards withdrawing muscle, central hinge, central spine, and the suspending hinge pressure points. These were up to Faowang. He could only help him protect his veins and arteries. Though Derba's martial arts were strong, all he'd learned were external martial arts and couldn't help his master to recuperate. In the past few days, he could only worry anxiously. Since Jinlun Faowang now had no worries, his Kai ran through his body, and he used all his strength to heal the injuries in his chest and lower abdomen. After 2 hours, the pain had lessened, and his face was red. He opened his eyes and nodded to thank Yang Guo. He joined his palms and said, "Master Yang, why are you suddenly helping me?" Yang Guo did not hide anything from him. He told him how he recently found out that Guo Jing and Huang Rong killed his father, and how he decided to go and take revenge. He explained how he accidentally bumped into Derba and followed him here. Jinlun Faowang knew that this young man was crafty. In 10 words, it was difficult for him to believe one of them. But today, killing him would have been as easy as turning his palm. But instead of killing him, Yang Guo actually helped him to recuperate. He really did not have any ill intent towards him, and he said, "So Master Yang has such heavy matters on him. But the Guo couple's martial arts are extremely high. I'm afraid that it would be difficult for Master Yang to take revenge." Yang Guo was silent. After a while he said, "Fine, then both father and son will die at their hands." Faowang said, "At first I thought I was invincible, and just by my power alone, I could hold down the heroes of the Central Plains and take the position of the Chancellor of Wulin. But the warriors of the Central Plains do not follow the rules of fighting one-on-one, and they all came at once. I can only make another plan. When I've recovered, I'm going to need to invite many skilled fighters to assist me. Once my forces are large, the Central Plains martial artists can't use numbers to overcome me, and everyone can compete fairly. Have you got intentions of joining my side?" Yang Guo was about to agree, but he thought about the killings by the Mongolian soldiers and said, "I cannot help Mongolia. Fawang shook his head and said, "If you want to kill the Guo couple by yourself, it would be almost impossible." Yang Guo thought for a while and said, "Fine, I'll help you get the position of the Chancellor of Wulin. You help me to take my revenge." Jinlun Fawang stretched out his palm and said, "That's settled. We'll exchange palms to seal this deal." The two of them exchanged 3 palms to set this deal. Yang Guo said, "I'm just going to help you to take the position of the Chancellor of Wulin. I cannot help you in your quest to help the Mongols attack Jiangnan and kill its citizens." Jinlun Fawang laughed and said, "Everyone has their will, one cannot force them. Brother Yang, don't mind me commenting, but your martial arts have many styles. Learning martial arts from many schools is of course good, but it would be unavoidable that your martial arts won't be refined. What is your most proficient skill? What martial arts are you planning to use against the Guo couple?" Those words froze Yang Guo's tongue. It was hard for him to reply. Yang Guo has had extraordinary encounters in his life, and his character was also covetous. Quanjin, Aoyang Feng, Ancient Tomb, the 9 Yin, Hong Qigong, and Huang Yaoshi, he had learned numerous martial arts from these schools. All the martial arts of these schools are ingenious and masterly, but they all need a lifetime of difficult work to reach the upper level of these skills. He took a bit here and a bit there, but none of his martial arts had actually reached a great level. When he meets second-rate fighters, the martial arts he uses are all flowery and fancy, causing confusion to opponents. But when he meets a first-rate martial artist, he will eventually be proved inferior. He can't even compare to Jinlun Fawang's disciples Darba and Huo Du. He lowered his head and pondered about it. These words by Jinlun Fawang were a real warning to him and showed up the weakness in the foundations of his martial arts. He had another thought. Since I've decided to stay with Gu Gu forever, how can I have relationships everywhere? Cheng Ying, wifey, and there's also Wan Yinping. I don't have any real feelings for them. How can I treat them improperly like this? Being greedy is really not a good thing. He continued thinking. No matter if it's Hong Qigong, Huang Yaoshi, Aoyang Feng, or even the Quanjin 7 Masters and Jinlun Fawang, every one of them is a famous master. They just practice the martial arts of their own school. They understand other sects and schools' martial arts, but they don't practice them. They just make themselves aware of them. In that case, what school of martial arts should I concentrate on? Based on his background, he should concentrate on the Jade Heart Manual of the Ancient Tomb sect. But then he thinks about the mastery and ingenuity of Hong Qigong's dog-beating stick technique, the subtlety of Huang Yaoshi's jade flute swordplay. If he ignores all of them, isn't that a pity? There's Godfather's toad stance and reversal of the veins. There are the martial arts of the 9 Yin manual as well. Any one of them is enough to make your name in the world. It was difficult to learn them. How can I just give them up like that? He left the hut and walked around the peak, thinking bitterly. It was extremely troubling. He thought for half a day when suddenly his mind lit up. Why don't I take the best of all these schools and form my own? The martial arts of the world were all formed by someone. If others can do this, could it be that I can't? His eyes lit up as he thought about it. He thought from morning to midday, from midday to night, and didn't eat or drink. All the martial arts he had seen in his life were floating around in his mind, clashing with each other. He had seen Aoyang Feng and Hong Qigong compete martial arts verbally, and he himself frightened away Li Mochou by using words from his mouth. But right now, the martial arts competing in his mind were even more rapid and spectacular than describing them verbally. Eventually, he involuntarily started to wave out fists and kicks. At first, it could be distinguished that this stance was from Hong Qigong. The other was Aoyang Feng, but eventually everything became muddled up. He couldn't hold on any longer and fainted. Derba watched from afar. He saw that he was acting crazy, pointing out his hand and sweeping his legs. He didn't understand what it was all about. Suddenly he saw him falling onto the ground. He wanted to go over there and help him, but Jinlun Fawang laughed and said, "Don't disturb his thoughts. It's a pity that your intelligence is mediocre and you can't grasp the meanings within." Yang Guo slept for half a night and continued with his thoughts the next morning. In 7 days, he fell unconscious 5 times. He thought he wanted to invent his own school of martial arts, but how easy is that? With his present abilities, it would be almost impossible to succeed. This isn't something that can be achieved in 10 days or 2 weeks. But after studying for several days, he suddenly understood. Since he couldn't combine all these martial arts together, there was no need to force the issue. He realized that all martial arts were at his fingertips. Later on, when he meets an enemy, he'll use whichever is needed. There was no need to think about the source of the martial art, and this wasn't far off from his intentions of forming his own school. Once he understood this point, he was immediately filled with comfort. In the past few days, Jinlun Faowang has been self-recuperating. His injury was now almost fully recovered, and he can move as freely as usual. Today, he saw Yang Guo's expression was now at ease and calm, and knew that he had advanced another level in his martial arts. He said, "Little brother Yang, I'll take you to see someone. This person is a great hero, an extremely open-minded person. Once you see him, you'll definitely be in awe." Yang Guo said, "Who?" Jinlun Faowang said, "The Mongolian Prince Kublai. He is the grandson of Genghis Khan and the fourth son of Prince Talyui." Jinlun Faowang laughed and said, "I agreed to help you. How can I break my word? But I was summoned here by Kublai. I need to go and see him. His camp is not far from here. It's within 1 day's travel." Yang Guo had no choice but to agree. He alone was not a match for Guo Jing and Huang Rong, whether it came to a battle of wits or strength. Without Jinlun Faowang's help, it would be difficult for him to take revenge. He could only go along with him. Jinlun Faowang was the first protector of Mongolia, and the Mongolian soldiers revered him. When they saw him, they immediately went and told the news to their prince. Mongolians have always lived in tents. Though they've entered a city, they weren't used to living in palaces. Because of this, Kublai stayed in the tents of the encampment. Faowang took him along to the royal tent. Yang Guo saw that this tent was twice as large as a normal Mongolian tent, but the arrangement within was very simple and crude. A 25 or 6-year-old man was sitting down reading. When this person saw the two enter, he quickly got up to meet them and laughed. "I haven't seen the protector for many days. I have been thinking about you." Jinlun Faowang said, "Your Highness, I'll introduce you to a young hero. Though this brother Yang is young, he is an extraordinary personality." Yang Guo knew that this Kublai is Genghis Khan's grandson. If he didn't have a noble appearance, then at least he should have a powerful air around him. How would he know that this person was just a hand-speaking, modest, and mild young man? He was rather surprised. Kublai studied Yang Guo. He pulled on Faowang with his left hand and then said to his servant, "Quickly bring some wine. I want to have a drink with this brother." The servant brought in 3 bowls of Mongolian milk wine. Kublai took a bowl and drank it all in one go. Faowang did the same. Yang Guo rarely drank wine, but now that the host has shown his hospitality, it wouldn't be appropriate to reject it. So he took the wine and drank it all in one go. He felt the wine was extremely harsh and rather sour. Kublai laughed. "Little brother, how beautiful is this wine?" Yang Guo said. "This wine is harsh and sour. It's like a knife going into your mouth. The taste isn't great, but this is something that a true man drinks." Kublai was pleased and called for more wine. Each of them drank 3 bowls. Yang Guo's internal energy was profound enough. He maintained his composure as he drank. Kublai said with joy, "Protector, where did you find this talented young man? My Mongolia is really fortunate." Jinlun Faowang then revealed Yang Guo's history to him. He played up Yang Guo with his words, describing him as if he was one of the eminent figures of the Central Plains. When Yang Guo heard how Jinlun Faowang described him, he couldn't help but feel a little proud. Kublai was ordered to take the Song land and has stayed in the Central Plains for a while now. He liked Han culture. His companion was Confucius. He read books and studied scriptures. He employed skilled martial artists, made acquaintances with them, planning to go south and attack the Song. If it were another person who saw such a young man like Yang Guo, it would be difficult for them to accept Faowang's words. But Kublai was a wise and supremely magnanimous, and he also had believed Jinlun Faowang without question. He was delighted and ordered a feast. In a short while, a feast was set up, wine and food which included both Han and Mongolian dishes. The bowls overflowed. Kublai said to his servant, "Invite the heroes from the virtuous guest house." The servant complied and exited the tent. Kublai said, "Some able people have been made guests here in the past few days. It really is my country's luck to have these people. But the thing is that they cannot compare with Faowang and Gentleman Yang." The first one that came in was tall and skinny. His face was pale and he looked like a corpse. Kublai introduced him to Faowang and Yang Guo. He was Xiangxi's Xiaoxiangzai. The second person was extremely short and dark. He was a skilled fighter from Tianzhu, India, Nimoxing. One of the last two was a strongly built 8-foot-tall person with a foolish laugh on his face and blank eyes. The other was high-nosed, deep-eyed with crooked hair and a yellow beard. He was a Hu from northern and western China, but he was wearing Han clothes. He wore pearls around his neck and jade bracelets on his wrists. A rich air surrounded him. Kublai introduced them separately. The Han was from Huajiang. His name is Ma Guangzuo. The Hu was a merchant. His family traded treasures in Kaifeng, Qing, and Taiyuan. His Chinese name was Yin Kexi. When Nimoxing and Xiaoxiangzai heard that Jinlun Faowang was the first protector of Mongolia, they examined him coldly. Their faces showed disrespect. When they saw the young Yang Guo, they thought that he was Faowang's disciple or grand disciple and didn't even give him another look. After 3 rounds of wine, Nimoxing could endure it no longer and said, "Your Highness, the lands of Mongolia are vast. This monk is the first protector of Mongolia. His martial arts must be extremely good. I want to experience his skills." Kublai gave a subtle smile and didn't reply. Xiaoxiangzai followed on. "Brother Nimoxing is from India. Tibetan martial arts originates from India. Could there such a thing as getting green from blue in this world? I don't really believe it." Jinlun Faowang saw Nimoxing's eyes light up. Xiaoxiangzai's face was exuding a green air. Faowang knew that these two people's internal energy was profound. Yin Kexi was laughing, using all his strength to produce an extremely uncultured and plain air. The more this person tries to show that he is unable, the greater the ability this person is likely to have. Faowang could not take him lightly, but he had no worries about the Han, Ma Guangzuo. He gave a wry laugh and said, "I was given the position of protector because of the kindness of the Khan and the 4th prince. Originally, I did not dare to accept this position." Xiaoxiangzai said, "Then you should give it up for a person more worthy." He glanced over at Nimoxing as he chuckled wryly. Jinlun Faowang stretched out his chopsticks and picked up a piece of beef. He laughed. "This is the fattest piece of beef on the plate. I originally didn't want to eat it, but I just happened to stretch out my chopsticks and happened to pick this piece. I just accept it as fate. If you are interested, you can pick it yourself." He hung the piece of beef over the plate, waiting for each one of them to come and take it. Ma Guangzuo did not understand the meaning behind Jinlun Faowang's words. He was talking about a piece of beef, but in reality, he was referring to the position of the first protector of Mongolia. When Ma Guangzuo saw him offering the piece of beef, he stretched out his chopsticks to catch it. His chopsticks were about to touch the beef when Faowang suddenly swept out one of his chopsticks and lightly touched his chopsticks. Ma Guangzuo felt his arm tremble with great intensity. He couldn't hold on to them, and the pair of chopsticks fell onto the table. Faowang's chopstick returned in time to keep hold of the piece of beef. The others looked at each other, startled. Ma Guangzuo still did not understand. He picked up the chopsticks and held onto them tightly with his 5 fingers, he thought. "This time you won't be able to knock it away." He stretched his chopsticks towards the piece of beef. Faowang did the same thing again, sweeping out one chopstick. This time, Ma Guangzuo was holding them tightly. Indeed, Faowang could not knock them out of his hands, but a ka-la sound was heard. The chopsticks broke into 4 pieces as if a knife had sliced through them, and 2 pieces of chopsticks dropped onto the table. Ma Guangzuo was furious. He called out and threw himself forward to battle Faowang. Kublai laughed. "There's no need to get angry, warrior Ma. If you want to duel, there's time to do this after we've eaten." Ma Guangzuo was afraid of his highness. He returned to his seat and pointed to Faowang, shouting, "What witchcraft did you use to break my chopsticks?" Jinlun Faowang laughed, still holding out the piece of beef in front of him. At first, Nimoxing did not have any respect for Jinlun Faowang, but after seeing how profound his internal energy was, he did not dare to continue looking down on him. He was an Indian. When he ate, he did not use chopsticks. He just stretched out his hand and said, "I want to eat this piece of beef that the big hand couldn't take." His 5 fingers came out suddenly like a metal claw towards the beef. Faowang swept out his right chopstick. It moved like lightning as he attacked the pressure points on his palm, arm, wrist, and the tip of his middle finger. Nimoxing's palm quickly turned and chopped down at Faowang's wrist. Faowang's arm didn't move. He turned his chopstick around and struck out swiftly again. Nimoxing felt the chopstick striking him on the hand and quickly took his arm back. Faowang's chopstick twisted back into its original position, still holding onto the piece of beef. His attack of the pressure points were extremely swift. He made many attacks and returned the chopstick into position before the piece of beef slipped away. Yang Guo and the others could see what had happened. The two had exchanged many stances in just a short period of time. Faowang's attacks with the chopstick were indeed fast, but Nimoxing's martial arts were also excellent. He was able to take back his hand in an extremely critical situation. Xiaoxiangzai called out, "Good skill." Kublai knew that the two were using advanced martial arts to test each other, but he couldn't see what type of martial arts they were using. Ma Guangzhuo's eyes were wide open. He looked at them, puzzled. Yin Kexi laughed and said, "Everyone's too polite. You're offering it to the others, but don't want to eat it yourself, nor do you want anybody else to. Everything will be cold by the time you've finished." He then slowly stretched out his chopsticks. The emerald and jade bracelets collided with each other noisily. Before his chopsticks touched the beef, Fawang's chopsticks were forced to tremble slightly by his internal energy. He was getting in the first attack, keeping Fawang's chopsticks in check. Fawang moved his chopsticks forward and allowed him to take the piece of beef. When his internal energy reaches his chopstick, he attacked his arm. Yin Kexi urgently circulated his internal energy and counterattacked. How would he know that Fawang's internal energy would suddenly withdraw? The beef was initially held by him, but his internal energy moved it forward, and Fawang once again got hold of the piece of beef. Fawang laughed, "Brother Yin is too polite by offering it to me." This time he used cleverness to win. Yin Kexi fell into the trap, and at the same time found out that the opponent's internal energy far exceeded his own. Luckily, he hadn't embarrassed himself yet. He gave a wry laugh and picked up a small piece of beef from the plate. He said, "The only things I love in life are treasures and precious objects. I don't really like fatty meat. I better just eat a small piece." He placed the small piece of beef in his mouth and then slowly chewed. Jinlun Fawang thought, "This Hu merchant is broad-minded." He turned to Xiaoxiangzai and said, "Since you offered it to me so modestly, I will accept." He slowly took the chopsticks back half a foot. He guessed that Xiaoxiangzai's internal energy wasn't weak, and so didn't dare to be careless by taking it back half a foot. If he needed to circulate his internal energy, it will be half a foot closer and half a foot further away from his enemy. Xiaoxiangzai chuckled and slowly raised his chopsticks. Suddenly he sent them forward and caught the piece of beef. He used the force to take it back, and he managed to pull it back half a foot. Jinlun Fawang did not predict that the opponent's movements would be so quick. He quickly circulated his internal energy and pulled back. The piece of beef moved back towards him inch by inch. Xiaoxiangzai stood up and placed his left hand on the table. The table made kala noises under this force, but he still could not stop the force that Fawang produced in taking back the piece of beef. Fawang looked at ease, whereas drops of sweat poured from the forehead of Xiaoxiangzai. The result was clear. Suddenly, a loud call by someone far away could be heard. "Guo Jing, brother Guo, where are you? Quickly come out, Guo Jing," the punk named Guo. At first, the call came from the east, but then it came from the west. There was a distance of a couple of li between the calls from the east and west, and it appeared as if there were two people calling out from the east and west. But the voice was the same, and there was no pause between the calls from the east and west. This person's movements were extremely fast, and the internal energy behind the calls was profound. This was something that was little seen in the world. Everyone looked at each other startled. Xiaoxiangzai loosened his chopsticks and sat back down in his seat. Jinlun Fawang laughed and said, "Thank you, thank you." He was about to place the piece of beef in his mouth when suddenly the tent door opened. Someone flashed across and stretched out their hand and snatched Fawang's beef, and then took a large bite out of it. This shocked everyone. They all stood up and looked to see who this person was. It was an old man with white hair, a white beard, and a smiling red face. He sat down on the rug and started chewing the beef noisily. Jinlun Fawang thought back on the movements of this man when he took his piece of beef. The more he thought about, the more shocked he was. The guards outside the tent who failed to stop this man all called out, "Stop the assassin!" 4 spears were thrust towards the man's chest. The old man stretched out his left hand and grabbed all the spearheads at once. He turned to Yang Guo and said, "Little brother, I'm really hungry. Pass over some more beef to me." The 4 Mongolian soldiers pushed forward with all their strength, but they couldn't move an inch. The 4 then tried to pull back, but again it was to no avail. As they strained with red faces, the spearheads seemed as if they were trapped under an iron mountain. They were not even able to pull them back half an inch. Yang Guo thought this guy was entertaining and picked up the plate of beef. He threw it easily to him and said, "Help yourself." The old man caught it with his right hand and placed it against his chest. Suddenly, a piece of meat from the plate jumped up and flew into his mouth as if it were alive. This entertained Kublai. He thought the old man was performing magic and gave out a cheer. But Jinlun Fawang and the others knew that the old man had circulated internal energy through his palm into the plate, forcing the piece of meat upwards. An ordinary person could force a piece of meat to jump if they tapped the plate, but they would definitely knock everything up at once, sending the juices everywhere. It would be impossible for them to knock them up piece by piece. The palm power of this old man had reached a stage where he could do as he pleased. Everyone else at the feast knew that they would not be able to do it themselves. Fear and respect sprang up in their hearts. The old man chewed and swallowed. As soon as one piece went down, another piece jumped up. In a short while, he had completely cleared the plate. His right hand waved out and sent the plate flying out in an arc towards Yang Guo and Yin Kexi. The two of them had already seen how good this man's martial arts were. They were afraid that he had used some kind of strange move in throwing the plate and didn't dare to stretch out their hand to catch it. The two quickly moved out of the way. The plate flew steadily through the air and landed on the table, knocking into a plate of roast lamb. The plate of roast lamb flew towards the old man while the empty plate stopped dead after a couple of turns. He had used a stream of Tai Kai energy, according to the continuous intent of Tai Kai. Uninterrupted, if it were shot outwards towards an open space, the plate would circle around. It is not difficult to use this force. There were a fair number of people who were skilled in using the variations of this force. But what was difficult was using the right amount of energy to get the most benefit. Skillfully sending the plate onto the table, stopping the empty plate dead, and sending a plateful of food to his hand was such a skill. The old man laughed out loud, extremely proud of himself. He circulated internal energy into his hands, and a piece of roast lamb jumped from the plate into his mouth. He finished the plate shortly. The 4 soldiers that were still in his hands were looking pitiful. They could not take back their spears, but they didn't dare to let go. The rules of the Mongolian army were strict. Abandoning a weapon in battle was an offense that led to execution. There was that, and the fact that they were responsible for the safety of Kublai. They could only use all their strength and try to struggle free. The old man saw that they were at a loss and was becoming more and more pleased. He suddenly shouted, "Change, change, change. 2 of you kowtow, 2 of you face the sky. 1, 2, 3. On 3, their arms shook and the spears snapped. The forces from his fingers were directed in 2 directions. On 2 of the spears, he circulated energy to push away. On the other 2, he circulated energy to pull. An ai-yo sound was heard as 2 soldiers fell and kowtowed, and the other 2 fell backwards facing the sky. The old man clapped and sang, "Little precious, the harder you fall, the taller you grow." This was a song that adults sing to console children after they've fallen. Yin Kexi suddenly got up and asked, "Senior is named Joe." The old man laughed. "Yep, haha, do you know me?" Yin Kexi folded his fists and said, "So it's the old urchin Joe Batang, Senior Joe Lao." Zioxiang Zai had heard of him before, but Jinlun Fawang and Nimoxing had not heard of Joe Batang before. They saw his martial arts were profound, but his actions were rather mischievous and childish. Indeed, the title Old Urchin is not in vain. Everyone's wariness disappeared slightly as their faces showed a smile. Jinlun Fawang said, "Forgive me for not knowing this senior of Wulin. How about a seat? Our Highness is eager to meet great people. He will be extremely happy at meeting such an eminent person today." Kublai saluted with his hands and said, "That is correct. Please have a seat, Mr. Joe." Joe Batang shook his head and said, "I'm full, I don't need to eat anymore. Where's Gu Jing, is he around?" Huang Yaoshi had told Yang Gu about how Joe Batang and Gu Jing became sworn brothers. Immediately he replied coldly, "Why are you looking for him?" Joe Batang had always been childlike and loved making acquaintances with young people. He was pleased when he saw that Yang Gu was young, and he was even more pleased when he heard him say "you," and not something like Mr. Joe or Old Senior. He said, "Gu Jing is my sworn brother, do you know him? He loved being around Mongols ever since he was young. Because of this, when I saw this camp, I came over to see whether he's here or not." Yang Gu frowned and said, "Why are you looking for Gu Jing?" Joe Batang had no worries. How would he know to conceal his thoughts? He just casually replied, "He sent a letter to me telling me to attend the Heroes' Feast. I had a few games on the road as I rushed from far away. When I got there, I was a couple of days late. The feast had finished. I was damn disappointed." Yang Gu said, "Didn't he leave a letter for you?" Yang Gu said, "How wouldn't I know them? Mrs. Gu is called Huang Rong, isn't she? Their daughter is called Gu Fu, isn't that right?" Joe Batang clapped his hands and said, "Wrong, wrong. That Huang Rong is a little girl herself. What daughter?" Yang Gu was startled, but then immediately understood. He asked, "When was the last time you saw them?" Yang Gu said, "I'm about to go. If you want to take in the atmosphere, then come along." Joe Batang was delighted. He clapped his hands and stood up, but suddenly he became depressed and said, "I can't. I need to go to Ziyang. Yang Gu said. What's so much fun in Xiangyang? Just don't go. Zhou Batang said. Brother Gu left a letter for me at the Lu Manor. It said that the Mongolian army is invading south and will definitely attack Xiangyang. He's leading the heroes of the Central Plains to Xiangyang to help. He told me to give a hand as well. I haven't seen him on my travels, so I better go to Xiangyang. Kublai and Jinlun Fawang looked at each other and both thought, so the warriors of the Central Plains have rushed to Xiangyang to protect the city. Just at this point, the tent opened and in came a monk. He was about 40 years old and looked elegant. His expression looked like that of a scholar. He went to Kublai and the two exchanged whispers. The monk was a Han, his given name Zikang, and was a council of Kublai's. His original name was Liu Kang, and he was an official in Xianya and became a monk later on. He was very knowledgeable and did things very thoroughly. Kublai had a great deal of trust in him. He had received some news from a guard that an important person has arrived in the camp and needs to be received immediately. Zhou Batang stroked his stomach and said, Hey monk, move over a little. I'm talking to that little brother. Hey little brother, what's your name? Yang Gu said. My surname is Yang, first name Gu. Zhou Batang said, Who's your master? Yang Gu said, My master is a girl, her beauty is unparalleled and her martial arts are excellent. She doesn't allow others to mention her name. Zhou Batang shivered and remembered his old lover Yingu. He didn't dare to ask any more and stood up. He waved his sleeves around to get rid of the dust on his clothes. The tent was filled with dust and dirt as a result. Zikang could hold on no longer and sneezed twice. Zhou Batang was joyous and waved out with even more strength. Suddenly he laughed out loud and said, I'm going now. His left hand waved out and the four broken spearheads shot towards Xiaoxiang Zai, Nimoxing, Yin Kexi, and Ma Guangzuo. As the spearheads flew through the air, woo-woo sounds were made. They were moving extremely quickly and the targets were close. In a flash, the spearheads were right before the very eyes of the four. Xiaoxiang Zai and the others were shocked. They could not dodge out of the way in time and could only circulate their internal energy to catch them. However, when they stretched out their hands to catch them, they caught thin air. A poo sound was heard as the four spearheads flew into the floor. The spearheads were shot out extremely ingeniously, immediate dispatch and withdrawal, as soon as the spearheads were in front of their eyes, and they suddenly twisted around and shot into the floor. Ma Guangzuo was a simple-minded person and just felt that this was amusing. He laughed out loud and said, You really have got lots of tricks, old man. But Xiaoxiang Zai and the other two were extremely startled. Their faces had changed color. They all thought about how they missed the spearheads. If the spearhead hadn't changed direction, they would have shot into their stomachs. With the amount of force behind the spearheads, what chance would they have of surviving? Zhou Batang was extremely proud of himself for making the four of them looking like fools. He turned around and was about to leave. Zikang said, Mr. Zhou, your amazing abilities are rarely seen in this world. I give you a toast on behalf of His Highness. He handed a cup of wine to him. Zhou Batang drank it in one go. Zikang sent another cup to him and said, This one is from me. Again, Zhou Batang drank it down. Zikang was about to give another cup to him when suddenly Zhou Batang called out, Oh no, my stomach hurts, I need to crap. Zhou Batang squatted down and undid his pants and was about to crap in the tent. Fawang and the others were amused and all called out for him to stop. Zhou Batang was startled. He called out, Something's wrong with this stomach ache. I don't need to crap. Yang Gu glanced over at Zikang and understood there was poison in the wine. At the beginning, he had some ill intent towards Zhou Batang, wanting to prevent Gu Jing from having a strong ally. But the ill intent he had disappeared immediately. He had no debts and dues with the old urchin. He saw that he was childlike and uncomplicated and felt good sentiments towards him. He couldn't endure it when he saw him fall for the dirty trick. He was about to suggest to him to hold Kublai as a hostage and force Zikang to hand over the antidote when he suddenly heard Zhou Batang call out, Strange, strange. So it's because I drank too little poisonous wine. That's why my stomach ached. Monk, quickly pour me another 3 cups, the more poisonous the better. Everyone looked at each other startled. Zikang was afraid that he would lash out before he died. He didn't dare to go over to him. Zhou Batang took a large step forward towards the table. Jinlun Fawang stepped in front of Kublai to protect him, but all he saw was Zhou Batang pulling up his pants with his left hand and reaching for the jug of poisoned wine with his right hand. He then tipped his head backwards and poured all the wine down his throat. Everyone's face lost its color, but Zhou Batang laughed and said, That's better. Now my stomach has got too much poison. Won't the old urchin turn into the old poisonous animal? I need to fight poison with poison. Suddenly he opened his mouth and shot out a stream of wine towards Zikong. Jin Yong saw that it was a dangerous situation and quickly picked up a table to block it. An arrow of wine splashed across the table. Zhou Batong laughed non-stop. He ran to the exit of the tent, and suddenly his mischievousness stirred. He grabbed the tent's support pillar and shook a few times. A craw-ack sound was heard as the pillar snapped. The tent fell down and covered Kublai, Jin Yong, Yang Guo, and the others inside. Zhou Batong was delighted and got on top of the tent, running back and forth, stepping on everyone inside the tent. Jin Yong sent out a palm and struck the sole of his foot. Zhou Batong felt a great surge of internal energy through his foot and couldn't suppress it. He did a somersault and landed back down, calling out loudly, "Interesting, interesting." He then left. Soon, Jin Yong and the others climbed out with Kublai, and all the guards clamored around to fix the pillar and erect the tent again. Zhou Batong had long gone. Fawang, Xiaoxiang Zai, and the others apologized to Kublai for not protecting him properly and letting him experience this shock. Kublai didn't punish them one bit, and instead praised the abilities of Zhou Batong, saying that it is a great pity that he couldn't make him stay. Fawang and the others had an ashamed expression on their faces. All the cups and plates were set up once again. Kublai said, "The Mongolian army has attacked Xiangyang many times before, but with no success. This time, the heroes of the Central Plains have gone there to protect the city. That Zhou Batong has also gone there to help. This is an extremely troublesome situation. I wonder, what great plans do you have?" Yin Kexi said, "Zhou Batong may have great martial arts, but we may not be weaker than him. When your highness attacks the city, it will be soldier against soldier, general against general. The Central Plains have their heroes, but so does the West." Kublai said, "Though your words aren't wrong, there's a saying, before a battle one must plan for victory in the temple. Greater planning will lead to victory, whereas little planning will not. Before I attack, I must have a plan to gain victory." Zikong said, "Your highness's foresight is magnificent." Before he finished, a shout could be heard from outside. Someone was calling out, "I said that I don't want to go, and I mean it. It's of no use if you beg me or anger me." It was Zhou Batong. What was he doing back here, and who was he talking to? Everyone's curiosity was roused, and they wanted to go out to take a look. Kublai laughed and said, "Everyone, let's take a look. I wonder who the old urchin is arguing with." Everyone took a step outside the tent and saw 4 people in an arc far away surrounding Zhou Batong. The 4 people were standing south, west, northwest, and north of him, surrounding him but leaving a way out to the east. Zhou Batong stretched out his arm and threw a fist. He called out, "I'm not going, I'm not going." Yang Guo was surprised. If he doesn't want to go, who can force him? Why is there a need for arguing? He saw that the 4 people were all wearing a green gown. The colors and clothing looked ancient and wasn't the clothing of the present time. There were 3 middle-aged men wearing tall hats. Standing in the northwestern position was a girl. Her green belt could be seen fluttering in the wind. The man standing in the northern position said, "We didn't have any intentions in troubling you, but you kicked over our pill furnace, ripped our spirit fungus, tore our books, and burned our sword room. You must come back with us and explain everything to our master. Otherwise, when our master blames someone, none of us disciples will face the punishment." Zhou Batong put on a smile and said, "Just tell your master that an old man passed by and accidentally caused all this trouble. Won't that be the end of it?" The man said, "You insist on refusing to come with us?" Zhou Batong nodded his head. The man pointed to the east and said, "Good, he's here." Zhou Batong turned around to take a look but didn't see anyone. The man made a sign with his hands, and the 4 of them suddenly pulled open a large net and covered Zhou Batong from his head downwards. The 4's hand movements were extremely drilled and extremely strange. Even with Zhou Batong's great abilities, he was trapped by the net and had no response. He just bellowed and hollered. The 4 people swerved around him and tied him up tightly. One of the men put him over his shoulders. The other 3 held onto their swords, protecting him as they flew to the east. Yang Guo was worried about Zhou Batong's safety and thought, "I must save him." He then followed after them, calling out, "Hey, hey, where are you taking him?" How could Jin Yong and the others not want to know what exactly this strange event is all about? They told Kublai and followed. After a few li, they arrived at a stream. The 4 people lifted Zhou Batong onto a boat, and 2 of them started to row. The rest of them followed along the shore. After a while, they saw a boat in the stream and all immediately leapt in. Ma Guangzuo had great strength and he rowed the boat. Soon they were just a few tens of feet behind. But the stream was windy, and after a few turns, the boat disappeared. Nimoxing leapt from the boat onto a cliffside and climbed up over 100 feet in a flash like an ape. He saw the boat in the west rowing along an extremely narrow brook. A thicket of trees covered the entrance to this brook. If one didn't look from on high, they would not know that the deep valley would have such a passageway. He leapt back onto the boat and pointed out the directions to them. They quickly turned the boat around and rowed towards the thicket of trees. The entrance was a cave. The ceiling of the cave was only 3 feet away from the water, and everyone had to lie down before they could row on. After leaving the cave, they saw the mountains on either side soared. The sky now looked like a string. The mountains were green, the water blue, the scenery extremely serene, but it was silent everywhere, exuding a feeling of danger. After another 3 or 4 li, the brook suddenly had 9 large slabs of stone arising from it, like a shield, blocking the way of the boat. Ma Guangzhuo was the first one to call out, "Damn, there's no way to row past." Zai Oxiangzai said in a creepy way, "You've got the strength of a bull, just throw the boat over." Ma Guangzhuo angrily said, "I don't have that kind of strength unless you zombies perform some kind of witchcraft." Before the two started arguing, Jinlun Faowing was thinking about the situation. How did the small boat pass this stone shield? When he heard the words of the two, he said, "No one can pick up the boat on their own, but the 6 of us together can. Brother Yang, Brother Yin and I will be on one side. Brother Nai, Brother Zio Xiong and Brother Ma will be on the other side. The 6 of us working together, how about it?" Everyone agreed and followed his instructions. The 6 of them stood on 2 sides, and each one found a steady place to stand on the rocks. Luckily, the brook was extremely narrow. The boat's width was at arm's length. Everyone leapt back into the boat. They wiped their palms and laughed. The 6 of them originally were wary of each other, but after working together, naturally they became a bit friendlier. Zia Oxiangzai said, "Although the martial arts among us aren't anything spectacular, we could be classed as first-rate fighters of Wulin. The 6 of us lifting a boat isn't really a difficult task, but..." Nimoxing followed on, "The 4 green people's martial arts are all over the place. Could they lift the boat over the rocks?" Out of the 6, 5 of them were already secretly surprised. Ma Guangzhuo was still thinking about what the words, "their martial arts are all over the place," meant. Nimoxing said, "Their boat is smaller. Their numbers are smaller also. The 4 of them being able to do this. Their strength must be incredible." Yin Kexi said, "There's no need to talk about the 3 men. That girl was a fragile 17 or 18-year-old teenager. There is no way she could have such skill. There must be something about those rocks. It's just that we can't see through just yet." Faowing gave a wry laugh and said, "People cannot be judged on appearances alone. Take a look at our brother Yang. He is of a young age but possesses great martial arts. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, who would have believed it?" Yang Guo said modestly, "The skills I've learned aren't much. What's good about my martial arts? But the 4 people in green were able to catch Zhou Batang. They must have some aspect that they excel at." His words were modest, but he was now talking to these first-rate fighters as brother this and brother that. Everyone had seen with their own eyes Yang Guo catching a plate thrown by Zhou Batang with a single finger. They did not look lightly on him. They all felt his words were reasonable, and all started to make their own guesses about this matter. Out of the 6, Yang Guo was the youngest. Jinlun Faowing, Ma Guangzhuo and Nimoxing spent most of their lives in the west. Zia Oxiangzai spent his time along in the mountains and didn't make acquaintances with anyone. Yin Kexi was the only one who was familiar with the sects, personalities and affairs of the Central Plains, yet he had no clue about who these 4 people in green were. As they talked, they eventually rowed to the end of the brook. The 6 of them went ashore and followed the path deep into the valley. There was only one mountain path, so there was no way to go wrong. However, the path got steeper and steeper as it went on and became more and more treacherous. The sky darkened and there wasn't a trace of the people in green. Just as they were getting anxious, there was firelight from far away. Everyone was pleased and thought, in a wild valley like this, firelight must mean people. Apart from those people in green, no one would live in a place with such dangerous terrain as this. They then increased their speed. They all knew that they were in a dangerous place, and each one heightened their defenses. Each one of them had roamed the world of Jianghu by themselves before and had experienced many dangers. Now 6 great fighters were entering the mountain. Who on earth could stop them? Though they were wary, they had no fear. After a while, they reached a wide, level, open space at the peak of the mountain. They saw an extremely large flaming bonfire. They walked closer a few hundred feet, and by the firelight, they saw a large stone building. Nimoxing called out loudly, "Hey, hey, some guests have arrived, come out quickly." The door of the stone house slowly opened, and out came 3 men and a girl. It was the people in green who had captured Joe Batang earlier on. The 4 of them bowed, and the leading person asked, "What are our guests' names?" The one thing that Yin Kexi excels most at is speaking. He laughed and then told them who the other 5 were. He then said, "My name is Yin Kexi, I am a Hu merchant. Apart from eating, the only thing I know are treasures. I am not like the others who are all highly skilled with martial arts." The person in green said, "Our residence is in an extremely secluded place. We've never had visitors before. It is our luck that some guests have arrived." "But what brought our guests here?" Yin Kexi laughed. "We saw the 4 of you catch the old urchin Joe Batang. We were curious, so we came along to take a look. Your residence is an extremely elegant and beautiful place. It has opened our eyes. This really wasn't a trip in vain." The first person in green said, "That old man who messed up our place is named Joe. He certainly lives up to the name Old Urchin." The second person in green said, "Are you with him?" Fowang replied, "We've just met him today. One cannot say that we are friends of his." The first person in green said, "That old urchin charged into our valley and ran riot." Fowang asked, "What did he do? Did he really rip up your books and set the place on fire?" The person in green replied, "Only that. I was ordered by my master to guard the pill furnace. I don't know how the old urchin broke into the pill room. He started to talk rubbish with me, saying he was going to tell a story, and then telling me to follow him in doing somersaults. He was mad and crazy. The furnace was burning at a critical stage. I couldn't leave and kick him out, so I pretended that I didn't hear him. He suddenly kicked out and knocked the furnace and the herbs in it over. I don't know how long it will take to collect all these herbs and medicines again." He looked angry as he said this. Yang Guo laughed. "He must have blamed you for ignoring him and that it was your fault, right?" The girl in green said, "Correct. I was in the fungi room when I heard the clamor in the pill room. I knew something was wrong and was about to leave the room to take a look when the old man dashed in. As soon as he stretched out his hand, he snapped the 400-year-old spirit fungus in 2. Yang Guo saw that the young girl was about 17 or 18 years of age. Her skin was extremely white, very soft and delicate, her eyes bright and clear, and there was a very small mole by her mouth. She said, "That old urchin is an extremely bothersome troublemaker. That spirit fungus had been grown for over 400 years. It is an extremely valuable object." The girl sighed. "My father was going to share it on his wedding day with my stepmother, but who could have known that it would be ruined by the old urchin? My father will of course fly into a rage." After the old urchin broke the spirit fungus, he placed it in his pockets and said something about not giving it back to me and laughed. I haven't done anything to offend him. Why on earth did he come here and cause trouble for me? As she said this, her eyes became red, feeling that she has been wronged. Yang Guo thought, "The old urchin had no reason to bully this girl. This is wrong." Yin Kexi said, "Please, can I have your father's name? We inadvertently came here without permission and don't even know the owner's name. Our manners are lacking." The young girl delayed and didn't reply. One of the men in green said, "Without our master's permission, we cannot reveal it. Please forgive us." Yang Guo thought, "These people are very secretive. They live here in this secluded place and aren't willing to reveal their identity to others." He then asked, "What happened after the old urchin stole the spirit fungus?" The third person in green said, "The one named Joe wasn't finished. After wrecking the pill and fungi room, he burst into the library, took a book and started to read. I was assigned to the library, and so of course I had to stop him. But he said, 'These are just lies that they tell to children. What's so great about this?' and ripped 3 books in one go. At that time, senior and second apprentice brother came along with apprentice sister. The 4 of us together were still unable to stop him." Fowang gave a wry laugh and said, "That old urchin has an eccentric character, but his martial arts are really spectacular. Of course it would not be easy to stop him." The second man in green said, "After causing trouble in the pill room, fungi room, and library, he went for the sword room. He burst into the room and broke out in a temper, saying that there were too many weapons. They're all over the place and almost cut him. He then set the room alight and burnt all the paintings on the wall. While we urgently tried to put out the fire, he escaped. We all thought that this was a serious matter, so we chased after him, caught him and brought him back so our master can deal with him." Yang Guo said, "I don't know what punishment the master of this valley will have for him, but I hope that he won't kill him." The third man in green said, "My master's wedding is not far away. He won't kill that easily." But if that old urchin says something to offend my master, then it would be his fault if trouble comes to him." Yin Kexi laughed. "Why would the old urchin deliberately stir up trouble for your master? He may be mischievous, but he doesn't seem to have a bad temper." The girl in green said, "He said that my father is old and he's still marrying." The senior apprentice brother suddenly cut her off and said, "That old urchin is mad. How believable are his words? Everyone has come from afar and must be hungry. I will serve some food to our guests." Ma Guangzhuo said loudly, "Great, great." His face lit up. The four people in green entered the kitchen and brought out some rice and vegetables and then set up a table. There were 4 basins. One had plain green vegetables, another had white tofu, one of the others was filled with yellow bean sprouts, and the last one was filled with black mushrooms. There wasn't any meat. Just 3 months after he was born, Ma Guangzhuo would not eat anything without meat. He saw 4 trays of vegetables in front of him that didn't even have a drop of oil on them. He was extremely disappointed. The first person in green said, "We do not eat meat here in the valley, forgive us. Please eat." He then bought out a jug and poured out a clear and clean liquid in the bowls in front of them. Ma Guangzhuo thought, "Since there's no meat, I better drink a few bowls of wine." He picked up the bowl and drank. He noticed that it had no taste and it was actually water. He roared, "This master is damn stingy. There isn't even a drop of wine for us." The first person in green said, "Our valley forbids alcohol. This is a rule passed down by our ancestors. Please forgive us." The girl in green said, "We have seen the words beautiful wine in books, but we've never experienced what this beautiful wine is. The books say that wine harms the mind. It appears that it isn't anything good." Fowang, Yin Kexi, and the others saw that these 4 people weren't old, but their actions and words were reserved and trite. Ever since they've spoken with these people, they haven't showed a single smile. Though their faces weren't hateful, it wasn't interesting to talk to them. In other words, they didn't speak more than half a word to each other. They stopped talking and lowered their heads as they ate. The 4 people retreated and didn't come forward again. After they ate, Ma Guangzhuo said that they should leave in the night. But the other 5 saw that there was something about this place. They were curious and wanted to understand it more clearly. Yin Kexi said, "Brother Ma, since we're here, we need to meet the master of this valley tomorrow." "How could we just leave?" Ma Guangzhuo roared. "There's no meat or wine. Isn't he trying to torture us? I can't live half a day like this." Zai said, "The majority of us are staying. Why are you trying to start something?" Ma Guangzhuo has been secretly afraid of his zombie appearance. When he heard him say this, he didn't dare to speak another word. That night, the 6 of them slept in the stone building on some straw mats on the floor. They felt that this valley was passionless, even stupidly stricter and more prudish than a Buddhist temple. Though the monks of Buddhist temples are vegetarians, they wouldn't treat people so coldly. These people didn't even show half a smile. Yang Guo was used to living in the ancient tomb and used to living with the icy cold Xiao Longnu. He was the only one who didn't think anything of this. Nimoxing said enraged, "The old urchin wrecked and set the building alight. That is something." When he said this, Ma Guangzhuo felt the same way and called out loudly in response. Nimoxing said, "Brother Jinlun, you're our brains. What kind of person do you think the master of this valley is? Is he a bad guy or a good guy? Are we going to be polite to him or are we going to beat the crap out of him?" Fowang said, "I'm like all you people here when it comes to trying to fathom what type of person this valley master is. It is difficult for us to guess. Tomorrow, we'll just act accordingly." Yin Kexi said quietly, "The martial arts of the 4 green disciples of this valley aren't weak, so naturally there will be even better martial artists in this valley. Everyone needs to be careful. Just one little slip up and the 6 of us might die here. That wouldn't be so good." Ma Guangzhuo was still complaining about the food and didn't listen to what Yin Kexi was saying. Yang Guo said, "If you're not careful tomorrow, you'll be caught and trapped here for the rest of your life. You'll be fed water and rice, vegetables and tofu every day. When that happens, I'm afraid that even the tapeworm in your stomach would want to die." Ma Guangzhuo was frightened and quickly said, "Good brother, I'll listen. I'll listen." That night they didn't sleep too peacefully as they thought about the danger they were in. Only Ma Guangzhuo slept well, snoring thunderously and calling out in his dreams, "Come, come, cheers, this slab of beef is massive." The hidden loveless valley. After Yang Guo woke up the next morning, he left the stone house and went outside. Last night it was dark and he couldn't see the surroundings clearly, but now he could. He was surrounded by emerald green grass, the flowers like a brocade. The scenery of this place was already magnificent, but the beauty of this place was even more rarely seen. He followed where his feet took him, and along the path he saw cranes, herds of white deer, squirrels, and rabbits, but none of them were alarmed by his presence. He passed 2 bends and saw the girl in green plucking flowers off to one side. She saw him approaching and greeted, "You wake up really early, have some breakfast." She plucked 2 flowers from the tree and offered them to him. Yang Gu accepted them and thought, "Is it possible that flowers can be eaten?" But then he saw the girl tearing the flower petal by petal and placing them in her mouth. He did the same. When he placed the petals in his mouth, he noticed a sweet fragrance, a fragrance like that of honey, and there was a subtle air of wine. He felt a feeling of comfort, but after a few chews, the taste became bitter and sour. He wanted to spit it out, but felt that he couldn't give it up. He wanted to swallow, but had a little difficulty in getting it go down his throat. He carefully looked at the plant and saw that the branches were covered in thorns, but the flowers were extremely beautiful, and even more fragrant than lotuses. He asked, "What is this flower? I've never seen it before." The girl said, "This is the passion flower. I've heard that it is a very rare plant. Tell me, what do you think of the taste?" Yang Gu said, "At first it is extremely sweet, but afterwards it is extremely bitter. This is called the passion flower. There's a meaning behind this name." He stretched out his hand to pluck a flower. The girl said, "Careful, there's thorns on the plant, don't touch it." Yang Gu avoided the thorns and was very careful, but he didn't notice that behind the flower was hidden another, and it pricked his hand. The girl said, "This valley is called the Passionless Valley, yet there are so many passion flowers growing here." Yang Gu said, "Why is it called the Passionless Valley? This name really is special." The girl shook her head and said, "I don't know why. This is the name our ancestors gave it. Maybe my father knows." The two then started to walk down the path, shoulder to shoulder. The scent of flowers filled Yang Gu's nose. By the side of the path were rabbits and young deer were darting about. It was a very adorable sight. He had a feeling of being carefree and joyous, and naturally he started to think about Xiao Longnu. If the person walking with me was Gu Gu, I really would love to live in this place forever with her and not ever leave. Just as he thought about this, the wound on his finger suddenly became painful. The wound was very small, yet the pain was so great. It was like someone smashing a hammer across his chest. He couldn't hold it in and gave an AI call, placed the finger in his mouth and sucked it. The girl blandly said, "You're thinking about your lover, is that it?" Yang Gu's thoughts were guessed. His face went red and asked, "How do you know?" The girl said, "If you've been pricked by the thorns of the passion flower, you cannot think about love for the next 24 hours, otherwise the suffering will be unbearable." Yang Gu was surprised and said, "There's actually such a strange thing as this in the world." The girl said, "My father said, love is like this. When it enters the mouth it is sweet, but afterwards it becomes bitter and sour. Furthermore, it is covered by thorns. Even if you are extremely careful, pain from it would be unavoidable. The flower was given its name most probably because it has this special characteristic." Yang Gu asked, "How come that within 24 hours one cannot think about love?" The girl said, "Father said, there's poison on the thorns of the plant. When people think about love, not only does their blood flow quicker, some unknown thing is created in the blood. The poison of the thorns of the passion flower is not harmful normally, but once it meets this something in the blood, it will create unbearable pain in the person." The two slowly walked to the unsheltered mountainside. The light of the sun lighted up this place. The ground and air were gentle and warm. The passion flowers have bloomed early here, and there were fruits on the plant. Yang Gu saw that the fruits were either red or green, but some were red and green, and there were hair on the fruits, like a caterpillar. Yang Gu said, "The passion flower is so beautiful, yet its fruits are so ugly." The girl said, "The fruits of the flower can't be eaten. Some are sour, some are hot, and some stink so much that it makes people want to vomit." Yang Gu gave a laugh and said, "Is it possible that there aren't any that are sweet as honey?" The girl glanced at him and said, "Sometimes there are, but you cannot tell by its appearance. Some that are extremely ugly are sweet, but an ugly fruit doesn't necessarily mean it will be a sweet one. Only by tasting it directly will you know for sure. Out of 10 fruits, 9 are bitter. Because of this, we never eat them." Yang Gu thought, though she is talking about the passion flower, it is like an analogy for love. Could it be that although the love between lovers is at first sweet, it will eventually turn sour? Can it be that a pair of lovers who are deeply in love with each other will eventually experience more bitterness than sweetness? Could it be that the yearning love I have for Gu Gu will eventually? As soon as he thought about Xiao Longnu, his finger suddenly broke out with a piercing pain again, and he swung his arm around a few times. He now knew that the words of the girl were indeed true. When the girl saw him like this, Her lip moved a little, as if she wanted to laugh but was refraining from doing so. Sunlight lit up her face and showed a pair of elegant eyes and brows. Her skin was white with redness floating on top of it. She looked very beautiful. Yang Guo laughed. I once heard a story. There was once an emperor. He set up a fire display and burned all things, throwing away most of his kingdom as a result. And the only reason for this was that he was trying to get a legendary beauty to smile. To be able to see a smile is a fortunate thing, so the same applies whether it's in the past or in the present. Yang Guo noticed that she had been cold as ice throughout this time, and there were some feelings of anxiety in his heart. But after this smile, most of the divide between the two went away. Yang Guo continued, everyone knows that a beauty's smile is rare to come by. They say something like a smile can overturn a city, another can overturn a country. Actually, there's something of a beauty's that is even rarer than a smile. The girl's eyes opened wide and asked, what? Yang Guo said, a beautiful girl's name. To have the opportunity to come across a beautiful woman is an extremely lucky event. To be able to see the smile of a beautiful girl would be because of the good deeds of their ancestors, and one must go through 3 lifetimes. Before he finished, the girl giggled again. Yang Guo continued looking serious and said, to be able to hear a beautiful girl reveal her name, that really requires 18 generations of great deeds. The girl said, I'm not some beautiful girl. No one in the valley has ever called me beautiful. Why must you joke? Yang Guo sighed and said, no wonder this place is called the Passionless Valley, but in my opinion the name should be changed to something else. The girl said, change to what? Yang Guo said, it should be called Blind Man's Valley. The girl asked surprised, why? Yang Guo said, look at how beautiful you are, but none of them praise you. Aren't the people who live in this valley blind? The girl laughed again. Her beauty could be classed as first class, but compared to Xiao Longnu's, there were still many li between them. Compared to the gentleness of Cheng Ying and the prettiness of Lu Wuxhuang, she appeared to be slightly inferior. But she was elegant, graceful, and there was a wholesome air about her. No one had praised her beauty before, and this was because the martial arts her valley practiced revolved around abdication. When her fellow apprentices see each other, they are always cold and remain unmoved. In the hearts of her fellow apprentices, though, they did think that she was very beautiful, but none of them dared to say it out loud. Today, she suddenly met Yang Guo. This person's character was dynamic and spirited. The stricter and more restrained she acts, the greater the urge he has to make her get rid of this unfeeling appearance. The girl was pleased with these words and laughed. I'm afraid that you're the blind man, calling this ugly girl a beautiful girl. Yang Guo put on a serious face and said, you never know, my eyes could be wrong. However, if you want this valley to remain peaceful and quiet, then you can't smile. The girl asked surprised, why? Yang Guo said, there's an old saying, a smile can overturn a city, another can overturn a country. That saying really ought to be changed. It shouldn't be country, it should be changed to valley. The girl bowed subtlety and laughed. Thank you, can you stop teasing me, please? Yang Guo saw her fine, elegant waist and trembled slightly. His heart was moved. Although it wasn't an intense feeling, his finger suddenly broke out in a severe pain again. When the girl saw him waving his finger about, she felt slightly displeased and said angrily, I'm talking to you right now, yet you're thinking about your lover. Yang Guo said, I'm innocent. It's because of you that my finger hurts, and here you are blaming me. The girl blushed and suddenly ran away. Yang Guo immediately regretted his words as soon as he said them, thinking, my heart belongs to Gugu, yet why haven't I changed this type of behavior? Yang Guo, you little bastard, don't talk such rubbish again. He inherited some of his father's scoundrel's attitude and ungentlemanly behavior. Every time he met a girl, he would tease and flirt with them, causing them to fall for him as a result. Although he didn't have any ill intentions, it was something that made him feel joy in his heart. The girl ran for a few tens of feet and suddenly stopped below a passion flower tree and hung her head deep in thought. After a little while, she turned to him and said, if an ugly girl tells you her name, it must be because your ancestors have done bad deeds for 18 generations, and the bad karma has passed down onto you. Yang Guo went over to her and laughed. Of all the things to be born with, you were born with the love of saying negative things. My ancestors for the last 18 generations have done many good deeds. Some of the good karma should be reaped by me. His words were again praising her beauty. Her face went slightly red and quietly said, I'll tell you, but you cannot tell another, and I forbid you to call my name in front of others. Yang Guo stuck out his tongue and said, oh, sweet beauty, aren't I afraid of not having any descendants? The girl showed another smile and said, my father's surname is Gongsun. She still did not want to reveal her name and wanted to go around in circles. Yang Guo interrupted. "But what is Mrs. name?" The girl smiled and said, "My father gave his only daughter the name Lu Yi." Yang Guo praised her. "The name is as beautiful as the owner." After Gongsun Le told Yang Guo her name, she felt closer to him and said, "When father invites you to see him, you mustn't smile at me." Yang Guo said, "What happens if I smile?" The girl sighed and said, "If father knows that I smiled at you and told you my name, I really don't know how father would punish me." Yang Guo said, "I've never heard of such a strict father, not even allowing his daughter to smile at someone. He has a beautiful daughter. Could it be that he doesn't love you?" When Gongsun Le heard these words, her eyes went red and said, "My father used to love me very much, but after my mother died when I was 6, he treated me stricter and stricter. After he marries again, I wonder how he will treat me." 2 drops of tears rolled down her cheeks as she said this. Yang Guo comforted her. "After your father marries, he will be happy. He'll definitely treat you better then." Gongsun Le shook her head and said, "I rather he treats me even stricter than marry another wife again." Yang Guo's parents died when he was young, so he didn't know much about these types of feelings. He wanted to make her happy and said, "Your new mother's definitely not as half as beautiful as you." Gongsun Le quickly said, "You're wrong, my new mother is a true beauty. Because of her, my father. Yesterday we caught that old man named Joe, but my father was busy with organizing the wedding. Otherwise, he would never have allowed that old urchin to escape again." Yang Guo was shocked and pleased. He asked, "That old urchin escaped again?" Le frowned slightly and said, "Didn't you hear me?" The two spoke for a while, and the sun gradually rose up in the sky. Le suddenly realized something and said, "Quickly go back. Don't let my fellow apprentices see us together talking. They'll tell my father." Yang Guo pitied her situation and stretched out his left hand to hold her hand and patted her on the back with his right, consoling her. Gongsun Le's eyes showed that this touched her. She lowered her head, and suddenly her face went red. Yang Guo was afraid that his thoughts would lead to Xiao Longnu again and cause his finger to break out in a severe pain again. He quickly rushed back to the stone house that he was staying in. Before he even got back to the stone house, he could hear the bellows of Ma Guangzu, complaining how his stomach can't survive on water and vegetables, and how could these sweet and bitter flower petals be eaten? "Are they trying to kill me?" Yin Kexi laughed. "Brother Ma, you better hide all the valuables that you have. I think the master of the valley has ill intent." Ma Guangzu didn't know he was being ridiculed and nodded his head in agreement. Yang Guo returned to the room and saw a few dishes filled with the petals of the passion flower on the table. He watched them eat the petals with squinting faces, and he was amused as he thought about how even Jinlun Fawang, the monk, was affected by effects of the passion flower. He picked a cup of water and took 2 sips when he heard footsteps approaching. A man in green came in, bowed to them and said, "Our master will now see his guests." Fawang, Nimoxing, and the others were all great masters. No matter where they went, the master of that place would come out and personally greet them. Even Mongolia's 4th Prince Kublai showed great respect to them. They could never have thought that the master of this secluded valley would be so impudent. They all were angry and thought, "When I see that rude valley master, I'm going to show him a thing or two." The 6 of them followed the man in green for a li or so, and suddenly came across a swaying green bamboo forest. Bamboo was rare in the north, and such a large piece of bamboo forest was even rarer. In the middle of the forest, the light, fragrant, relaxing scent of flowers could be noticed. As soon as they passed through the forest, the scent suddenly became overwhelming. Everywhere in front of them were Chinese narcissi. A shallow pond with a depth that was less than a foot was filled with the flowers. These flowers were also something that was usually seen in the south. Why could they be found here in this mountain valley? Fawang thought, there must be some hot springs below the mountain that keeps the ground and air warm. Every 5 feet or so was a Mu Chun plant. The man in green darted across the pond over them. The 6 followed, but Ma Guangzu was heavy and had poor lightness kung fu. Though his footsteps were large, they weren't large enough to take steps of 5 feet or so. After stepping on a few plants, he decided to drop into the pond and follow them by wading instead. They followed a green stone path, and from afar, they saw a large stone building built under the cover of the mountains. The 7 advanced towards it. Outside the building were 2 young attendants who were holding a fly whisk in their hands. One of the attendants went inside the house to tell the master of their arrival, while the other opened the door to receive them. Yang Guo thought, I wonder whether the valley master will come and receive us in person. Before his thoughts were settled, a bearded old man in green came out of the house. This old man was extremely short, no more than 4 feet tall. His appearance was strange, but the strangest thing about him was his exceedingly long, thick beard that hung down to the ground. He was wearing a dark green gown and had a green rope tied across his waist. Yang Guo thought, "This valley master looks so weird, yet his daughter is so beautiful." The old man bowed deeply to him and said, "It is our luck to have such prestigious guests. Please come in for tea." When Ma Guangzu heard the word tea, he frowned deeply and said loudly, "Drink tea. What place doesn't have tea? Why must I come to this place for it?" The long, bearded old man did not know what he meant. He glanced at him and then bowed again, receiving the guests. Nimoxing thought, "I'm a short man, but the master of this valley is even shorter. You win on shortness, but let's see who wins on martial arts." He barged forward to the front, stretched out his hand and said, "Nice to meet you." He took the old man's hand and immediately used the strength in his hands. The others took a couple of steps back when they saw the two stretching out their hands to receive each other. They knew that when two great martial artists exchange forces, it will be something out of the ordinary. Nimoxing first used 20% of his power in his hands, but he found that the opponent did not counterattack nor block. He was slightly surprised and increased another 20%. He felt that his was like holding a slab of solid wood. He increased another 20% of the force in his hands. A faint green air glimmered across the old man's face, and his hand was still like a rigid piece of wood. Nimoxing was extremely surprised and didn't dare to use the rest of his strength just in case the enemy counterattacked when he was at full strength. Then, he would not be able to defend against the attack. He laughed and released his hand. Jinlun Faoweng was second in line. He saw what had happened and knew that Nimoxing was unable to ascertain the short man's abilities. There was no need for him to make a rash move while the opponent's abilities were still unclear. Faoweng folded his arms and gracefully walked past. Xiaoxiang Zai and Yin Kexi followed together with Ma Guangzu behind. Ma Guangzu had seen the short man's beard and thought that it was extremely weird. He hadn't eaten anything except the passion flowers, and that made him even hungrier. At this moment in time, he was hungry and angry. When he entered, he suddenly stuck out his foot and stepped on the tip of the man's beard. The old man was unmoved and said, "Please be careful." Ma Guangzu put his other foot on the beard and said, "What?" The old man moved his head slightly and Ma Guangzu suddenly flipped over. Such a large person falling to the floor is no ordinary matter. Yang Guo was the last one to enter. He quickly dashed forward 2 steps and struck Ma Guangzu on the backside, moving his gigantic body forwards. Ma Guangzu stood firmly on the ground and rubbed his backside. The old man acted as if he didn't see anything. He invited them into hall and sat them on the west side before saying clearly, "The guests have arrived. Call for the valley master." Yang Guo and the others were shocked. So that old man is not the valley master. From the back of the hall, 10 or so green-clothed disciples came in and stood to the left. Gong Sun Le was amongst them. After a while, a person entered the hall and bowed to the 6 and casually sat down on a chair on the east side. The long, bearded old man stood by his chair. From the man's presence, this person will be none other but the valley master. This man was about 45 or 6 years of age. He had a handsome face and appeared graceful. From the way he greeted them and sat down, he also seems to possess a lofty air. His face was yellow and dried, not looking like someone who possessed great martial arts. As soon as he sat down, some of the disciples in green brought tea forward. The hall was decorated in green, but the valley master was wearing a precious satin blue gown. He was extremely eye-catching in the deluge of green. The valley master picked up a tea bowl and said, "Please have some tea." Ma Guangzu took a look at the bowl of tea. He saw that it was cold and had a few tea leaves floating on top. It was extremely bland to him, and he snapped, "Valley master, you don't eat meat and you don't even drink tea. No wonder you look ill." Ma Guangzu said, "What's so good about being vegetarian? Does it make you live longer without aging?" The valley master said, "My ancestors have lived here since the Tang dynasty. Since then, none of the descendants has ever dared to break the vegetarian code." Jinlun Faoweng folded his arms and said, "So this place was set up in the Tang dynasty and has lasted until now. That really is something." The valley master folded his arms and said, "You're too kind." Xiaoxiang Zai suddenly spoke in a strange way. "Did your ancestors ever see royal concubine Yang Wan?" His tone was extremely peculiar. Nimoxing, Yin Kexi, and the others were familiar with his voice after spending time with him. They were surprised when they heard this voice and all turned towards him. They were even more shocked when they saw his face. It had somehow completely changed. His face had the appearance of a zombie before, but now it looked even odder. Fawang, Nimoxing, and the others were slightly worried. So this person possesses such great internal energy, even his face changes. He's circulating his internal energy so he can immediately strike out. Does he want to show the Valley Master a thing or two? They all put their guards up when they thought about this. The Valley Master replied, "My ancestors did work in the Tang court as officials. When they saw what state the court had fallen into under Yang Guozhang, they were furious and left to reside in a secluded place." Zai laughed. "Your ancestors must have drunk the water that royal concubine Yang had washed her feet with." Everyone's face in the hall changed as soon as these words came out. It was a challenge to the Valley Master, and he was going to make his move very soon. Fawang and the others were surprised, thinking, "This Zai is extremely crafty. He always lets other people go first in all matters. Why has he volunteered to go first suddenly?" Fan Yuang swung his staff a little and created a gust of wind. He said, "I was thinking my beard is too long. Since you want to be a barber and help me trim it, nothing could be better. Let's fight." Zai lifted his head and looked up at the beam of the hall in thought. It appeared that he didn't hear his words. Suddenly, his right arm came out like lightning, and the scissors cut towards the man's beard. Fan Yuang would never have dreamed he would actually attack while sitting in the chair. He had no time to dodge and urgently dropped his staff down. His body lifted up and somersaulted through the air about 10 feet off the floor with the staff still on the floor. Zai's attack was extremely quick, and Fan Yuang's dodge was also very swift. In that cut and dodge, the two skilled martial artists had displayed their advanced martial arts. But Fan Yuang still suffered by that attack. Though he managed to avoid that cut, 3 strands of his beard were cut off by the tip of the scissors. Yang Guo and the others knew that he was putting on a show, and that it was his breath that forced the bowl to drop on the floor. But Ma Guangzu did not know this, and thought that the strands of beard had great power after being blown by Zai. He called out loudly, Zai, your strands of beard are really something." Zai laughed. He opened and closed the scissors, then called out, "Short beard, do you want to test out my dog fur scissors again?" Though everyone could see that he was laughing, his face remained unmoved. They were becoming more and more shocked by him. They were thinking, when someone reaches an advanced state in their internal energy, they can be angry and delighted without showing it on their faces, even to the point where the face looked emotionless. But it is unheard of that someone can laugh so heartily but keep that fearful face. His face was too unsightly for the eyes. Everyone just took one look and immediately turned away again. Fan Yuang was now furious after being ridiculed again and again. He bowed to the Valley Master and said, "Master, today this disciple cannot continue treating the guests with respect." Yang Guo was extremely surprised. That short man is a lot older than the Valley Master. How can he call him Master? The Valley Master nodded his head slightly and gently waved out his left hand. Fan Yuang swept out his staff towards the chair that Zai was sitting on. Though he was a short man, he possessed incredible strength. The 100-kilo, 220 lb staff swept out and created a great gust of wind. Though Yang Guo and the others were on the same side as Zai, they did not know exactly how skilled he was. They all watched the two battle with great concentration. The staff was now half a foot away from the leg of the chair. Zai lowered his left hand and actually stretched it out to grab the head of the staff, and at the same time, he cut forward towards his opponent's beard with the scissors. Fan Yuang was extremely angry, he thought. "You actually dare to look down on me like this?" He swung his head to the side, and his beard moved to the side while the staff continued its sweep and struck Zai's palm. The others called out and stood up. They all thought that Zai's palm would have suffered a serious injury. But Fan Yuang felt as if his staff had struck water, soft as if nothing was there. He knew something was wrong and quickly pulled back. However, Zai twisted his wrist and kept his hold on the staff. Fan Yuang felt his opponent immediately pushing outward, so he immediately sent the staff forward. The force he applied was ferocious. He assumed that Zai would have to leave his seat, but he didn't predict that the opponent would again leap away with his chair, this time to the left as the staff thrust towards thin air. He had no choice but to release his grip on the head of the staff. Fan Yuang's left hand twisted above his head, and the staff made a circle and was sent towards his opponent's head. Zai wanted to ridicule him and leapt up about 10 feet with the chair and actually passed over the staff. The others saw that his hand's techniques were extraordinary and swift. Though he was in the chair, he moved as if he was not. They all called out in appreciation. Fan Yueng saw that his opponent was highly skilled. He poured all his concentration into this battle. The staff created gusts of wind as he moved it around. He knew that hitting him would not be easy, but if he smashes his chair, he will be able to get the initiative. But Xiao Zai's martial arts were extraordinary. His right hand continued to open and close the scissors, and suddenly cut towards his beard, while Xiao Zai's left hand used the trapping hand technique to snatch his staff. In the blink of an eye, the two had tens of exchanges. Though they appeared to be equal, Xiao Zai had not left his chair, not giving an ounce of respect towards his opponent. Jinlun Faoweng was shocked inside. Who would have thought that zombie would actually possess such great abilities? More exchanges passed between the two. Fan Yueng kept on using sweeping stances across the floor, while Xiao Zai kept on leaping up in the chair, getting quicker and quicker. The Valley Master suddenly called out, "Don't hit the chair, otherwise you can't handle him." Fan Yueng was startled, but then immediately understood. While he's sitting in the chair, I can only fight him to a draw. If his legs were on the ground, then my beard will be cut off in just a few stances. He suddenly changed his stances and urgently waved and twisted the staff around. A circle of silver light covered the short man in green, while on the outside, there was a zombie-like person leaping up and down without stopping. This was a strange, rarely seen spectacle. The Valley Master knew that Xiao Zai was deliberately trying to make a fool out of Fan Yueng. If it continued, he would definitely suffer. The Valley Master then stood up and slowly left the table. He said, "Yueng, you are not a match for that master, come back." Fan Yueng obeyed his master and said loudly, "Yes." He straightened his staff and was about to take it back when Xiao Zai called out, "That won't do, that won't do." He flew up from the chair and threw himself down onto the staff. A kala sound was heard as the staff smashed the chair into pieces, but the staff was held onto by Xiao Zai with his left hand. Xiao Zai steadied his left leg and opened the scissors. Fan Yueng's beard was hanging between the blades. A cut now and his beard would be gone. Who knew that the long beard that Fan Yueng grew was an extremely soft, lethal weapon? The technique for using it is along the same lines as a whip, a chain and a whisk. His head moved slightly and the beard whipped around, escaping from the blade of the scissors and wrapped up the scissors instead. He moved his head backwards and a great force pulled the scissors forward. Xiao Zai called out loudly, "Aiyo, old shorty, your beard is pretty powerful. Xiao Zai is in awe of you." One had his beard wrapped around the scissors, whereas the other had his hand holding onto the staff. There was no result for the time being. Xiao Zai laughed out loud and said, "Interesting, interesting." Suddenly a gray blur flashed in from the front door. This person was extremely quick and was pushing both his palms forward towards the back of Xiao Zai. The Valley Master shouted, "Who is it?" This attack was quick and vicious, and it was certain to hit its target. Xiao Zai released his grasp of the staff and turned his left palm around and pushed out at the opponent below the elbow, immediately dispersing the power of his palms. The person angrily said, "You bastard, I'm going to kill you." Yang Guo and the others were incredibly surprised when they saw this person. They all called out, "Xiao Zai?" The person who had dashed forward and attacked was Xiao Zai. Can he divide into two? And why was he attacking his own double? They were all puzzled by this. Once they had settled down, they saw that the person who was tangling with Fan Yueng was dressed in the clothes of Xiao Zai. Everything was correct from the shoes to the hat. Though his face looked like a zombie, it was not the face of Xiao Zai. The person who had entered had the face of Xiao Zai, but he was dressed in green. The man in green sent his claw-like hands out towards the back of the Xiao Zai who was holding the scissors and called out, "What kind of hero attacks from an ambush?" Fan Yueng was slightly surprised when he saw help had come. This person was dressed in the Valley's uniform, but he did not know him. He placed his staff to the side and saw the two zombie-like people battle each other. It was now clear to Yang Guo. The person who was holding the scissors must have stolen his mask as well. He put it on, changed into Xiao Zai's clothes, and then came here to the hall to stir up trouble. Because Xiao Zai's face normally was like that of a corpse, no one was able to tell. Though Yang Guo had worn the mask himself, but he did not know what he looked like when wearing the mask. When Cheng Ying had hers on, he didn't dare to look at her too often. He was actually deceived by this person. He concentrated for a while and recognized the martial arts of the person holding the pair of scissors. He called out, "Zhou Batang, Give back my mask and scissors." He then leapt into the middle of the hall and stretched out his hand to snatch the pair of scissors back. This person was Zhou Batong. He'd had a lapse in concentration and was captured by the fish net of the 4 disciples of the valley. But Zhou Batong possesses amazing abilities. Just a slight lapse in concentration by the 4 disciples, and he immediately broke out of the fish net. Afterwards, he hid behind some rocks. He had planned to turn the valley over, but then he saw Yang Guo and the other 5. In the middle of the night, he ambushed Zai. He sealed his pressure points and moved him outside of the house. Then he changed into his clothes. Zhou Batong had great lightness kung fu, and he comes and goes without a trace. Zai was still asleep when this happened, and even Jinlun Faoweng didn't notice anything. After he changed clothes, Zhou Batong returned to the stone house and lay down by Yang Guo, and then stole the scissors and mask from his bag. When they woke up the next morning, no one actually noticed anything amiss. Zai tried to unblock his pressure points after they were sealed, but Zhou Batong's pressure point sealing skills were powerful. It was 6 hours before he was able to move his limbs again. At that time, he had only his undergarments on. He was extremely angry, and when a valley disciple passed by, he immediately took his clothes and hurried to the stone building. When he got there, he saw a person dressed in his clothes in a heated battle with Fan Yueng. His anger was uncontrollable, and he threw his palms forward viciously. Zhou Batong saw Yang Guo coming forward and began to use his skill of left-right mutual combat. His left hand came out and in as he fought Yang Guo, while his right hand used the scissors and forced Zai to stay back. When the scissors opened, the distance between the blades was 2 feet. If his head were in between the blades when it closed, his head would separate from his neck. Though Zai was furious, he did not dare to get close. When the Valley Master first saw Zhou Batong fight Fan Yueng, he was already secretly in awe. Now he saw him using 2 hands to fight 2 people separately. It was as if he were divided into 2. The yin-yang twin blades that he practices has some similarities to the technique that Zhou Batong was using. But how could he do 2 things at the same time like Zhou Batong was doing? He also saw Zai's claws were like steel, his stances vicious, and he saw that Yang Guo was graceful and elegant, his form and posture exquisite. He pondered, "There are many able people in this world. The 2 old men are indeed terrific, though this young man's internal energy is shallow. His form, fists, and kicks are filled with elegance." He then said clearly, "Please hold your fists." Yang Guo and Zai leapt back at the same time. Zhou Batong took off his mask and threw the mask along with the scissors towards Yang Guo and then called out, "I've had enough fun, I'm going." His legs lightly touched the ground, and he leapt up onto a beam up in the ceiling. The valley's disciples gasped when Zhou Batong showed his face. Gongsun Le called out, "Father, it's that old man." Fan Yueng was the master of the Passionless Valley's senior disciple and was older than his master. Apart from his master, he was the most skilled fighter of the valley. After being ridiculed by Zhou Batong many times, how could he not be angry? He was short and skilled at climbing. His body leapt up and grabbed a pillar, climbing up it like an ape. Zhou Batong loved it when someone tangles with him. He saw him climbing up but couldn't wait for him to reach the beam, so he stretched out his hand to receive him. How would Fan Yueng know that it was a kind gesture? When he saw his right hand stretching out towards him, he stretched out his finger and poked the great tomb pressure point on Zhou Batong's wrist. Zhou Batong felt a slight sensation in his hand and immediately sealed off his pressure point and loosened his muscles. Fan Yueng felt that his finger was poking something like cotton wool. He quickly pulled his finger back. Zhou Batong's palm turned and struck the back of his arm with a very crisp sound. He called out, "1 basket of barley, 2 baskets of barley, you and me slap the great barley." Fan Yueng was extremely angry. He swung his head and his long beard swept towards Zhou Batong. Zhou Batong heard that urgent gust of wind and propped his left foot against the beam and moved his body. His left hand then held onto the beam and hung his body in the air. Zai knew that Fan Yueng was not a match for Zhou Batong. Even if he went up there to join in as well, he would not be able to beat him. He turned around to Nimoxing and Ma Guangzu and said, "Brother Nai and Ma, that old man doesn't give any respect to the 6 of us. He really has gone too far." Nimoxing was a rash person and could be offended. Ma Guangzu was slow-witted and wasn't clear on what was happening when they heard him say, "Doesn't give any respect to the 6 of us." They were angered and both of them shouted. They then leapt towards the beam to grab Zhou Batong's leg. Zhou Batong kicked away their palms with his legs. Zai turned to Yin Kexi and said coldly, "Brother Yin, are you really just going to watch?" Yin Kexi gave a wry smile and said, "Brother Zai, you go first and I'll be right behind you." Zai made a strange whistle. The walls trembled and he suddenly leaped up. His knees were not bent. His whole body and arms were straight as a ruler as he went for Zhou Batong's abdomen. Zhou Batong saw the incoming attack and pulled in his body and became almost sphere-like. His right hand swapped with his left hand in holding the beam. Zai clutched thin air and dropped back down. His body was straight as a stick. His feet touched the ground and he jumped up once again. Fan Yueng was holding onto the pillar and sweeping his beard while Zai, Nimoxing, and Ma Guangzu kept on going up and down trying to attack him. Yin Kexi laughed. "This old man's martial arts really are incredible. I'll join in as well." He searched his pockets and took out a weapon. The hall was lit up with the reflection of pearls and the glimmering of gold. There was a whip in his hand. This whip was made out of gold and silver silk and was embedded with pearls and gems. In the world of Jianghu, one would not be able to find such a precious and lavish weapon as this. There were glimmers of gold and glistening of pearls as the whip was swept towards Zhou Batong's leg. Yang Yu was amused with what was happening and thought, "These five are showing off their abilities in attacking the old urchin. If I don't do something out of the ordinary, I can't claim to be capable." He had an idea. He put on the human skin mask and copied the strange call of Zai. He then picked up Fan Yueng's staff, stood it up against the floor, and used the force to throw himself up into midair. The staff was already over 10 feet long, so using it as a lever, he was able to face Zhou Batong face to face. He called out, "Old urchin, watch out for the scissors." The large scissors cut forwards towards his white beard. Zhou Batong was delighted. He moved his head and called out, "Little brother, your move is pretty amusing." Yang Yu said, "Old urchin, I haven't done anything to offend you. Why did you make fun of me?" Zhou Batong, "Things come and go and you haven't suffered one bit. Instead, you've gained something." Yang Yu was startled and said, "What came and went?" Zhou Batong laughed. "Right now I need to be excused and I can't speak with you." He saw the incoming golden dragon whip of Yin Kexi and stretched out his hand to seize it. Yin Kexi's whip twisted and he was about to counterattack his opponent's back when he fell back to the floor. The old urchin said, "Your colorful dead snake is pretty funny." At this moment, Fan Yueng's beard came sweeping across. His hands were holding onto the pillar and he was relying on his beard to attack his enemy. Zhou Batong laughed. "So a beard can be used like that?" He copied him and swung his beard towards him, but his beard was a lot shorter than Fan Yueng's and he had never practiced with it before. The move he made with his beard was useless. A shua sound was heard as he was struck by Fa Yueng's beard across the cheek, leaving a red mark. If he didn't have such profound internal energy, he would have been knocked out. After receiving this attack, Zhou Batong wasn't angry. Instead, he had great respect towards Fan Yueng and said, "My beard can't compare to yours. I admit defeat. We don't need to continue." Fan Yueng had just had a successful strike and was not going to hold back. His beard came out again. Zhou Batong did not dare to use his beard to meet it again, so his left hand used the techniques of the vacant light fist, throwing out soft fists. The wind created by the fists forced Fan Yueng's beard to the right, and just at this time, Ma Guangzu had leaped up to make an attack. The beard brushed against his face. Ma Guangzu's eyes were covered, so he grabbed the beard with his two hands. Fan Yueng's beard had originally been under his control, but after being forced away by the wind from Zhou Batong's fists, he lost control of it, and it was now in Ma Guangzu's hands. He was startled and did not use force to pull it back. Ma Guangzu was holding it tightly, and as he descended, he dragged Fan Yueng down to the floor. Ma Guangzu was thick-skinned and the fall didn't hurt much. However, Fan Yueng had fallen on top of him. Fan Yueng said angrily, "What are you doing? You still haven't let go." Though Ma Guangzu didn't feel much pain from the fall, Fan Yueng's feet had landed on his stomach and it was quite painful. His anger also erupted and he shouted, "I don't want to let go. What are you going to do about it?" After he said this, he quickly wrapped the beard around his arm.